like instructions and things. Um,
Hello, and welcome to the second meeting of the 41st session of the Faculty Senate of Texas A&M University. If you need a reminder of the Zoom features used in our Senate meetings, the Zoom tip sheet can be found on our website at the top of the current agenda page. At this time, please make sure your microphone is muted. Senator Klein will be monitoring the raise hands function. He will verbally identify you, then you can unmute your mic and ask your question. In fairness to others, please limit yourself to one question at a time. Senator Klein will also be monitoring chat to convey messages as necessary, so please send any chat questions directly to him. We are using the registration function of Zoom to track attendance. Most visitors today have been asked to view the meeting via our live stream, but our guests and administrators who may be asked to answer questions are joining via Zoom. Visitors wishing to address the Senate may make this request by sending a chat message to Senator Klein or by using the raise hands function. Finally, if the senator wishes to offer a motion during today's meeting, please raise your hand at the appropriate time and ask to be recognized. The speaker comments often occur after our guest speaker, but given the unique recent events, I would like to start with the speaker comments. My dear faculty, it has been 3 weeks since I last talked to you. And at this moment, I, and presumably many of you, am feeling raw and hurt. Trauma and shock can have devastating effects. And as a university, I think we are experiencing trauma and shock as a whole. But I want to remind you that you are not alone. We each have each other. We have the students, and there are many people who are supporting us from the outside. Just like 3 weeks ago, the whole world is watching us. But they are not just watching us because of what has happened to us, but also because of what they fear might happen to them. Many universities are struggling with similar issues. They are worried about academic freedom being attacked at their own universities. They worry about restrictions being put in place that jeopardize their ability to create a space of belonging and inclusivity for their students, faculty, and staff. They worry about outside influences that might cause faculty or staff to act unethically or against their own core values. The whole world is watching us. They want to see how we will handle this situation. If we do this well, not only can we serve as a model for other struggling universities, we can also grow stronger. We are in a tender spot right now, but I am confident that we will pull out of this stronger than ever and be more committed as a university as a whole to the university's mission and our core values. In order for that to happen, we need to change, and everyone needs to participate in the change. And several things are necessary for this change. First, we need to speak of that which has been largely unspoken or spoken only in back corners. There has been a strong culture of fear and retaliation over the past many years. I know that many of you have felt that, because many of you have personally told me that you feel that way and given me examples of things that have happened to you or others. It is not healthy for a university to function in such an environment. When I mentioned this to General Welsh, he said it is unhealthy for any institution to function in such an environment, and I agree wholeheartedly. I want you all to start talking about your experiences with fear and retaliation. I want people to know what others have been experiencing so we can be sure to not have such things happen in the future. And we need to get comfortable with disagreeing with each other, including and especially our superiors. Second, we need to acknowledge the pain that we are experiencing. Many people feel hurt and used. People have lost role models, mentors, presidents, deans, and faith in the university. Even more are terrified for what is coming next. Our values were shaken to the core. For most of us, it feels like part of A&M died this month. And I think we need to properly mourn. This may seem silly, but I would like us all to take a moment of silence to allow yourself to feel and acknowledge any hurt that you are personally feeling. So what do we do next? I will tell you that speaking to the new faculty this week gave me a renewed perspective. I remembered my first day/week here and the hope and energy that came from that. I also felt the hope and energy coming from the new faculty that have just joined. At the new faculty orientation, I also defined what I mean by shared governance. And it might make sense for me to also define what I mean by shared governance here, or rather, what functional shared governance means to me. To me, functional shared governance requires 4 core things. 1, that faculty speak their concerns to the administration truthfully and without fear. 2, the administration listens to the faculty's concerns and takes them into account. 3, when a decision is made against the wishes of the faculty, a rationale is provided. And 4, all of this happens with complete transparency, so the faculty feel confident that their concerns are taken into account. And even if they disagree with the action taken, they can understand the rationale for the decision. I will tell you that shared governance is far from perfect at Texas A&M, but I promise that I will work hard to make that a reality with all of you, to move us to the A&M that all of us remember and treasure. And I have heard General Welsh make that same commitment. We can move past this, but we need to do this with the administration, not against them. I know it's hard to trust anything or anyone right now. We continue to find out more hurtful things. It is natural for you to feel trepidation and weariness of all and any members of the administration. But without trust, we can't accomplish anything. No one is omniscient. You will never know all the information. We can only do the next right thing based on our current knowledge. Yes, I am quoting Anna from Frozen 2 right now. I have a 4-year-old daughter and I've watched it many, many times. But that is the moment we are in right now. All we can try to do is the next right thing. What we should not do right now is demonize people. It is very easy to demonize people given where we are at and what we have experienced. That will not help us move forward. We must recognize that situations and people are complicated. Additionally, it is easy to blame recent events on outside influences. We should not. Outside influences will always exist. People can and will express their opinions. That is free speech. Everyone has the right to express their opinions. What is not okay is if those opinions cause us to act unethically. We as a university should be strong enough to act according to our core values, no matter what outside influences exist. We are in a time of significant vulnerability. We can look outward for a scapegoat or inward for empowerment to change and for inspiration. This is a time more than ever when we need to live by our values. This is not a time to be performative, but rather turn our values into actions, imparting how we act and how we lead. Together, we can create a university community whose values have been challenged, but we can persevere and become stronger through our experiences. There are 3 main things that I want to see change. 1, appropriate policies need to be put in place to ensure that our faculty are protected. However, all the policies in the world don't help if they're not followed. 2, we need transparency in all matters. Transparency will also help. The third and most important change is that we need to get out from under our culture of fear and retaliation and back to a place where our core values lead our actions. As an R1 and land, sea, and space grant university, it is very rare to see a university so strong in both excellence and selfless service. Our historic mission has been to develop people. Our Vision 2020 mission was to be an academic and research leader of the world. Sometimes those 2 missions are at odds, but I am inspired that we keep trying to have that balance. This is an amazing university, and we are at a time when we as a university can truly transform and come out stronger than ever. And I look forward to doing that together. Let's work together to do the next right thing for the university. Thank you. That ends the speaker comments. Joining us today as a guest speaker is Interim President Mark A. Welsh III. I have heard great things about General Welsh in terms of both his leadership and his integrity. I have had the opportunity to interact with General Welsh several times over the past few weeks, and I have been impressed, and I am confident he will be able to lead us to the A&M we remember. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tracy, and well said on your speaker comments. Thank you for those. Howdy, everyone. Thanks for letting me have some time with you today. But what Tracy asked me to do is just make some opening comments about kind of where I sit now, a couple of weeks into the interim position, and what I've been seeing, where I think we need to head, and then see whatever you want to talk about. I'd love to talk about anything. Let me tell you the first thing, the first task that I have has been to listen and learn. The listening has been interesting because the feelings are pretty strong right now, which shouldn't be surprising to anybody. My feelings are pretty strong right now. So I expected everybody else's would be as well. Here's kind of what I'm getting from everybody. And you heard it behind Tracy's remarks. There's hurt, there's anger, there's confusion, there's consternation, there's worry. You can feel it when you talk to whatever group it is. And I've been talking to every group I can. The students, not so much. They're a little bit insulated from it. What happened this summer because they weren't here, but they certainly didn't like what they were reading in the paper and hearing on TV. And so they're confused and concerned. The staff is the same as the faculty. Everybody is embarrassed as well a little bit. And so I do think there's some things we need to figure out. And let me tell you what I've been spent my first couple of weeks doing, and where I think it leads me next. As I mentioned, I just started talking to everybody I could talk to very quickly. And I'm trying to figure out, besides the obvious events that have been in the news, what has caused all the consternation, the confusion, the frustration. And most of it, people express to me, comes from a feeling that they don't know what's going on, or they weren't included in the conversation that decided what we need to be doing in the future. And so number one is to figure out, why were they not being communicated with? Was there a structural problem? Are there personalities in the wrong positions that just don't have the communication skills necessary to spread the word? Was there a conscious effort to simply not communicate? And then whatever that was, remove the blockages and get people talking again, so that people at every part of our university understand where we're going, why we're going there, and what the milestones are that we need to achieve. The second piece was, if there were any structural problems that we put in place, either communications plans or organizational structures that added to the difficulty of communication, we need to change those. For example, if you have a log jam that's occurring in a particular place because there's too much information trying to flow through there, and no time to get the work done that they're required to do as well. But we need to adjust the job responsibilities, who the people report to, et cetera, and make sure that we are at least enabling communication with the system that we have in place. And the third piece is to take a look at those things that people are frustrated about, to make sure that we know where they stand in terms of their execution. So the big stuff that everybody's frustrated about has to do with MGT report and the plan that followed. And so specifically, Greg Hartman, Susan Balabia, and I have been talking about the organizational structure in the front office staff, the duties, the way the duties have been divided between the vice president for faculty affairs and the provost. The way things have been, and the way the vice president for student life is organized to be in the communications flow. How can we improve those things? The second bigger step is, as you have seen, I think I tasked asked a task force led by Joe Pettibon to go take a look at all the major activities and surrounding facilities stuff that go with the path forward. And let's figure out which of those initiatives is on track, and we can just encourage it to continue. If some of those initiatives are not on track, we'll take a deeper dive and figure out why not. What are they just the wrong idea? Are they scoped wrong? Are they scaled wrong? Do we need more resources? What can we adjust to make them be successful? And then the third set of initiatives, maybe things that are really struggling, and then we have big choices to make. Does this continue? Do we terminate it? Do we change the shape of it? Do we de-scope it? What do we do to make it successful? And in all those conversations, you need to be involved. And so this is not going to be dive to the details of every different thing that's happened over the last 2 years, because some things have gone well. And if we get the feeling that they're going well, I've told Joe, go to the next item. Let's spend our time where it's frustrating people and let's figure out how to make the adjustments we need to make. And I'll come back through all these same groups I've been talking to with our thoughts out of that. Get your thoughts on them, get your input, and then we'll finalize some decisions and move forward. So that's about the next month of work. We're not going to stretch this out very far. So when Joe comes to your neck of the woods, please take the opportunity to meet with him. He's going to be setting up a number of meetings. I've directed him to please be very careful about providing opportunity for faculty to weigh in on these discussions in arts and science, and even in the Bush School, in some of the changes that were made between, public health and vet med, et cetera. I mean, we just need to make sure that we do one last look and make sure we're on track in these things. And then we're going to look at all the facilities that go with it, because I got to tell you, I'm a little worried about funding for facilities. We have a number of things we're trying to do right now, and I want to make sure that there is a funding plan that's solid, or a development plan that is in place to provide funding that's solid. We've probably lost a little bit the bubble on coordinated development planning between the multiple foundations and the university, and we need to get back to that because we can't succeed without them, and it's got to be detailed enough that we know where we're asking them to raise money, and it needs to be against our highest priorities, whatever those are. So that's also underway right now. And the other thing this listening tour, I think, is helping me with is I'm getting a lot of ideas from people about things that A&M ought to be thinking about for the future. As an interim president, you don't want to go trying to shake the tree too much here. If I can get things stabilized a little bit here, we can get communication flowing, and we can all kind of start bringing ourselves back together to be the university we know we can be, and celebrating the great things that you guys are doing each and every day, as opposed to worrying about the next headline. Then I think we'll be on solid ground. You guys will keep taking this university places it's never been. I don't have any doubt about that. I'm a huge fan of our faculty. It's incredible what you can accomplish, and our students just trail in your wake. They will be great because you're great, and they'll leave here and create great reputation for Texas A&M. And this is going to continue. It's just a matter of getting through this really kind of ugly summer and getting our feet back under us and keeping moving forward. I'll stop there, and I'll talk about anything you want.
Thank you, President Welsh. We will now open it up for questions. Raimundo,
has his hand up.
go ahead, Raimundo.
Raimundo Royave, Engineering. So thank you, President Welsh, for your initial words. I'm a bit concerned because what I hear is a lot of tactical moves in the next few months, but I don't see big strategic rethinking of what has been going on. I think that your message is kind of at odds with what Tracy eloquently put as, our big concern as faculty and staffs. I have the feeling that right now the organization wants to just move on and try to pretend that whatever happened was just a one-off negative event, and that we can just focus on getting our processes right so we can then move forward, right? But I think that, I have been in this university for 17 years. This is probably one of the biggest crises in confidence that faculty and staff and now students have on the institution. Personally, right now, I don't have any trust in any institution within Texas A&M beyond my department. My alliances with my department and my friends, it doesn't go beyond that because of the way that our administration has acted. It is good to think about reconciliation, but I think there has to be accountability. A few bad actors have stepped aside, but that doesn't mean that we as a faculty have confidence in the administration. And I think that without us buying into whatever the administration has in mind to try to fix the problems that we have so far, I think that we are not going to get that far. So that's my biggest concern. I welcome the fact that you're listening to all of us. That's important. That is the first step. But I hear a lot of tactics. I don't hear a lot of deep dive, strategic thinking of where we should go, given the fact that we are not living up to our potential, which is great. I agree with you and I agree with Tracy. But I think that we have to think really deeply into what got us here so we can then begin to heal.
Yeah, thanks, Raimundo. There's nothing I can do about whether you trust the administration or not, other than just keep grinding and prove to you that you can trust me. It takes time. I understand that. I'm not expecting everybody to jump up and down and be excited about listening to everything I say and nod your head and believe me. My job is to prove this to you. As far as tactical versus strategic, I'm going to wait until we do this review. I'll tell you two areas that I think A&M should focus on more, that are more strategic. Number one, we should put ourselves into the national conversation routinely. And we have not done that in many areas. It can't be because of a football team. Engineering has done it in a lot of ways. Ag school's done it in a lot of ways. There is potential for many of the other colleges here to keep A&M in the national conversation routinely. And those are the programs, the research, and the people that I think we should be supporting the most. So that's one thing I would tell you is a longer range look. The other thing is I think we need to graduate great citizens, not just great Aggies. And that means focusing on teaching all of our students at Texas A&M both the rights and the responsibilities of citizenship. I think that's a higher level call. And I think it's something we can focus on in the future. But there'll be others. I want to see where we stand on all this other stuff at MGT, where it's taking the colleges and the departments, where it's not taking us, where it's blocking the road. Let's get that straight. And then we'll figure out where we go next. There could be a new president here in 6 months. I don't know when the search is going to start. I have no idea. And so let's just get things stable for the new president to walk in the door and be able to do that long-term strategic look you're talking about. In the meantime, I think we want to be moving as much as we can in that direction. And it starts with just doing the blocking and tackling of good organizations and shared governance properly, which means a lot of communication.
Thank you.
Jorge?
Hi, President Welch, thank you for taking time to speak with the faculty. Let me just start with one item. As you know, there's a lot of coverage out there in the news about the Bosch hiring of Professor McElroy. And one thing that I still don't understand is why the hiring of a program director caused so much controversy. I mean, we hire program directors all the time. We hire department heads, even deans, but for some reason, this one just went through the roof and without any logical explanation. Why? I mean, why did external forces somehow manage to convince some of the administrators of the Board of Regents that we needed to stop this hiring process somehow? I mean, if this is just an example, so this might happen again, right? With the same program. So what can you say about that? I mean, this is really troublesome, in my opinion.
Well, I think the fact that the university president was involved in a department level hiring is troublesome. I don't have any idea why this was troublesome. I think Dr. McElroy would have been a great hire for the journalism department. I think we've weaponized the acronym DEI, and people are using it on all sides of every argument. And I don't think any of that's healthy. I wish this had not happened with Dr. McElroy. But I wish and I can't answer your question, or I don't know. I don't know why people felt that way, but they did. One of the key points in all this, I think, is something Tracy said, where somebody can call and offer an opinion on something, but that doesn't mean you have to accept it. The hiring process is owned and operated by the university. I mean, period. We make that call. And we hire who we think will be the best faculty member for the job that we need them to do. The idea that there are people who are, liberal faculty members and we were hiring people who have liberal tendencies, that really surprises somebody? Do they know who we already have on our faculty? We have all kinds of faculty members here. We have people from all ends of the political spectrum. It's what makes great universities, this difference of thought and difference of ideas. So I can't answer your question. I'll just tell you that if a regent calls me and says, hey, I really am worried about this, I'll say, thank you for the call. But I'm not going to call the department head and tell them who to hire.
Thank you for your response. If I may follow up quickly, do you think we need a program in journalism, given what we know now? I mean, I don't think we need one. We used to have one. We closed that program 20 years ago. I think as you can see from some of the coverage out there, the reason we wanted to relaunch it is just to please some people out there. Was not because it was driven by the market, right? I don't think there's a market demand for more journalists, so would you consider just, shutting down the program for the time being until things settle a little bit?
Well, it's one of the areas I think that this quick look team is going to look at. I'm a fan, me personally, I'm a fan of a journalism program. But what I don't know is, is there a market? I don't know. I haven't done the research on this. But this team is going to look at that particular idea because it was one of the new ideas that came out of the path forward.
Okay, thank you.
I'll let you know when we're finished with that what I think. But fundamentally, I do believe that a journalism program is a good thing for a school to have.
Okay,
and I don't think we should have any intent of trying to control what type of student or faculty are in it.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Rajesh?
Oh, thank you, Tracy. President Welsh, I also feel like we're looking at very specific issues and ignoring a big, broad, general issue. When this Band-Aid was ripped off, there was a lot of things that became visible that were not, and a culture of cynicism, a culture of deceit, and I would say even a culture of inbuilt disrespect for the diversity of our state. And I point to you to Lieutenant General Weber's comments that were reported in the battalion. This was a person who was in charge of our undergraduate students, who was talking disrespectfully about the certain groups of people outbreeding others and how that had to be controlled. What I worry about is that we uncover occasional examples, but how deep and how pervasive is this culture of deceit and disrespect in the administration? Have we just seen a little bit of it? Are there others that also espouse those things? I imagine Lieutenant General Weber's attitudes were well known, but nobody said anything. I'm also very concerned about the issue of Dr. Alonso and how she was treated. That is extremely dangerous to the state of Texas, to have somebody shut down from the Lieutenant Governor's office because they didn't like what she was saying. This is a public health issue. People die because of a lack of communication. And so for the university to proactively punish somebody for speaking the truth as they saw it is just dead wrong. I would like to know that that does not happen ever again. And it does have an effect on our students. A student just told me this morning, but she's thinking of submitting a grant. How will my reviewers look at something that comes from A&M? Will they be automatically increasing the scrutiny of something, a project that comes from A&M? So I think it is already having an effect on our students as well. And thank you for listening.
Yes, sir. In the Dr. Alonso case, I see this one is very different from Dr. McElroy. I mean, Dr. McElroy was just wrong. It was just wrong with a capital W. In the Dr. Alonso case, the decision to suspend her and put her on paid leave was made not as a punishment, but was made as a quick decision because the person who made it didn't know what was happening around this whole investigative action. He'd been told about the censure from UTMB. He confirmed that. He talked to Dr. Alonso, who told him that she hadn't said what was alleged to have been said, but that she had made a comment and used somebody's name specifically, and she could see how it could have been misinterpreted, although she certainly didn't intend it in that way. And so that, I won't say they mutually agreed, but they had a discussion and decided that the best thing to do was to put her on paid leave while he investigated to protect both her and to protect the university. Is that a good call or a bad call? We can argue that one, but at worst, it's a mistake. It's not a crime. He was trying to take her feelings into consideration. He was trying to take care of her and keep her sheltered a little bit from any media that came out of this. And the thing that was missing in this case was that there's no guidance in our instructions that says, how do you handle this? Which is why we put the task force together to go take a look at the protections that faculty members need in any situation where their behavior or conduct is called into question. And we'll get that done. Vice President for Faculty Affairs Office is doing that now. So at least there has to be a notification string before that's done in the future, so that it can't be made, decision can't be made by one person, whether well-intentioned or not, and it can't be made quickly. We need to take our time and think through it. And I think that would prevent a situation like that in the future, Rajesh. I believe it would. So that's the process we're going to try and follow.
If I may just reply, I think there is a process already in place that was ignored. And any way one looks at it, it amounts to proactive punishment, which has a reputational impact on somebody, and it has the effect of a chilling of speech. And I think that has to be recognized. You cannot punish somebody. We may call it administrative leave, but we cannot punish somebody without evidence of wrongdoing.
Well, yeah, I agree with you completely.
Dana?
Hi, thanks, Tracy. President Welsh, I really am, like the others who have spoken already, extremely grateful for your time and for taking the time to listen to the faculty. We sure hope that we have indeed turned a corner here and are moving forward in a positive way. My question relates to this moving forward process. I think many on the Faculty Senate and many faculty within our constituency are ready to help, ready to move forward in this review. And if there is anything that we can do, and you can envision what we can do to help tee it up for the investigators, for Joe Pettibon and his crew that are going to be asking questions during this review process, what can we do to help? Because those of us that are in particular academic, I'm at the vet school, and so we were pretty well targeted by the MGT report and the path forward in ways that we were not at all satisfied with. And rather than bellyaching, what can we do to help? Is there a process proactively that we can follow to be able to make it easier for the issues to get resolved and for our voices to be heard? How can we help?
Dan, thank you. Thank you, Dan. It's a great question. Yeah, my recommendation would be, if you have areas that you think are particularly frustrating for the faculty in the vet school, or that are really having trouble coming together, or that you think we just got dead wrong, just capture them in a note and send it to Joe Pettibon or I.
Thank you. We will.
And that'll help them target what they're looking at when they come visit.
We're on it. Thanks so very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Adam?
Yes, hi, President Welsh. I would like to ask if you are considering some personnel changes at the VP level. And I ask this because, a lot of the mistrust that exists right now in the faculty are because there are a lot of people that sit in the VP's office or at least high-level administrative appointments that were part of the culture of deceit and skirting rules and breaking the law. And a lot of them are still there. For example, the current VP of Faculty Affairs is currently being sued for violating the Civil Rights Act of 1965 in the ACES Plus, in his approval of the ACES Plus memo. As far as I know, the university has not done anything to investigate or see whether or not he was actually doing that. Hank Walker, senator from engineering, sent an email around to all the faculty, although he was trying to defend him. But in that email, he mentioned an action which, if it occurred the way Hank Walker said, would also be a violation of the Civil Rights Act of 65. Namely, he said that he when he was associate dean of engineering, he would reject whole slates of candidates because they weren't racially diverse enough, which again is a clear violation of the Civil Rights Act of 65. If he in fact did that, I don't know if he did that or not. Is there any plans to revisit some of the personnel decisions that President Banks made? Just wondering.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Let me tell you what I didn't plan to do. One of the concerns that I've heard from a number of people is when President Banks took over, there were wholesale changes made in lots of different areas. And you'll remember that was at the end of the same time period, post-COVID, where we had a number of deans that departed. We were not replacing them until the university president was replaced. We had a number of department heads who retired or departed, and we were not replacing them until their deans were replaced. And so we had this massive waterfall of we can't fill slots. And everybody was struggling with kind of a void of leadership. We're not going to do that. So we're pressing ahead with all the dean searches that are currently underway. And we're pressing ahead with all the searches for vice presidents that were currently underway. As we talk about this, as we get through this review of the different parts of the path forward, I'm looking at every vice president slot and trying to decide where should it fit. Do we need this many vice presidents? Should some be assistant vice presidents or associate vice presidents? Should some be directors? Should we restructure to enhance communication as opposed to slowing it down in some areas? And do we have the right personalities in the right positions? And sometimes I haven't heard about the concerns you just expressed. I haven't seen those allegations at all. So I don't know anything about them.
I can forward you the evidence if you like.
Okay, yeah, please do. But no, I haven't looked at, we haven't looked at changing anybody yet because I want to see how this thing works. Give me a month and I'll tell you what we're going to do with all of that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think cutting the head off of everything is the right approach when you step into a job, especially when things are unstable because of the turmoil right now on the external audience. So we have a lot of people up here who do great work. They're working hard. I don't think they're part of what happened with Dr. McElroy.
Angie.
Thank you. President Welsh, I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think that Professor Alonso's situation was drastically mishandled. I think it was incredibly bungled, and it has created a culture of fear on campus with the faculty, whether intended to or not. I have heard from everybody except Professor Alonso that she was perfectly happy with the outcome. And I'm curious as to see if she was required to sign anything that prevented her from speaking about the topic publicly. And I would like to know if it was felt for her to be placed on administrative leave, why we didn't follow up with a very clear message that cleared her and a rebuttal back to the program that censuring them for censuring her for her freedom of speech. So I think that there's a lot of improvement in a process like that if you're talking about having that continue. I also am extremely concerned about State Bill 17. We have not heard clearly across the university how this is going to be implemented. The only thing we've received recently is information about a class, the Hullabaloo U. I was on one of the faculty members that helped develop some of the modules for this. This is not just our first year experience, but this is actually have courses in departments for credit that incorporated the Hullabaloo U modules. And there was a decision made well before OGC reviewed the State Bill 17 information that decided that because of State Bill 17, our respect and inclusion module had to come out, and then that was rescinded. And now after OGC has made a decision, apparently that nobody's bothered to share with the faculty, the administration has again told us we can't teach respect and inclusion. So I guess we're going to have to take the R out of RELIS because we can't talk about it. And it actually warns faculty that if you should cover some elements of respect and inclusion in your own HU courses, you should focus on recognizing the range of life experiences. And it talks about mandatory programming. If you've ever seen it, it is not programming and encourages students to have a discussion and talked about respecting others and the incredible, which also could include a breadth of political views for sure. And it specifically talks about social integration within the university community. So because we don't specifically say we're going to cover DEI issues in the course, we're not allowed to talk about anything to do with respect. I think it's hugely problematic. And the idea that this doesn't seem to be a problem, that we're telling faculty what they can and cannot talk about. A lot of staff teach these programs, these courses, their courses. If it were programming, we could do it online. And the reason that we're getting our students, we can't actually require our students to take these, but we strongly encourage them because funding is held up to the colleges if we don't have a certain number of our students registered in these things. So I hope that someone is taking a strong look at this, and I really hope that someone is going to share information about State Bill 17 implementation, and maybe you could address that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm hoping, Angie, that we'll get it this week after the General Counsel presents their guidance to the Board of Regents. I don't know that. They haven't said that out loud, but that's what I'm hoping. I did send to the deans last week through the provost a summary of my notes from a meeting with the General Counsel that gives kind of the general tone of their guidance relative to State Bill 17. And so with a number of examples of things in there. I was actually fairly pleased with the interpretation the General Counsel took of the State Bill 17 in the guidance that they laid out. I don't know if anything has changed from what I heard from him in that meeting. But in general, it was, if it's a student organization, then it's fine to continue. We can support it. Faculty and staff advisors are okay for those organizations as long as we offer the same support to any other organization that's similar in nature. The only specific references to shutting things down were to activities that had DE&I in the title, or that were labeled as DE&I and did work in that field. Those are restricted by the state bill. Anything that was academic content was protected and could be used. So I don't know what you were just reading from, but that sounds like a disconnect with what they said. And anything that was research related was specifically excluded from the state bill. So you're free to pick research topics and conduct research in the manner required, and you can use any of the topics in that area. So I actually was, not pleasantly surprised, because I'm not pleasantly surprised by anything related to this bill, but it was actually something that led me to believe we can actually comply with the law, and we can still do the things that make sense to do as we prepare men and women to go work in communities that have people of all colors, all language backgrounds, all socioeconomic strata. They got to go live in a big world, and we need to prepare them to do that. And so I don't think there's anything that's going to be in there that's going to stop us from doing the things we need to do, including targeted recruiting.
Well, sir, this letter came from the provost's office, so I will be happy to share it with you for your
Yeah,
review.
if you would, I'll talk to Alan. We'll see what.
I'm happy to talk about it because I'm here, Angie, and it came from me. So, yes, we sent that. If you look at the slides that went with respect and inclusion, on the subtopics on everyone was DEI. When I talked to OGC and they looked at SB 17, and we looked at all of the people that teach this, and Then I looked at also the percentage of our students who had committed suicide in the last year and talked to the leader of CAPS, as well as those that have been involuntarily hospitalized. We thought this was a better bet than to expose people to impose the universal lesson that had been designed on every student. I also talked to Tracy Hammond, who has taught this in the past, and talked about grounding it. And it said, should you elect to cover some of the elements in respect and inclusion in your HU courses, that's leaving it up to the faculty member to include that. It's just saying it does not have to be one of the required lessons. So it was pulled from the required. It is optional for you to cover.
Okay, let's pause and do some questions from the chat. Andrew?
So I have a number, but I think there's probably a couple that are pretty relevant to this conversation. So the question from one person is, what do you do to support academic freedom? I know there's work being done on how to distinguish between what is and what is not protected speech, but that is not the point of this question. It is one thing to clearly know what can and cannot be said in a classroom as protected speech. And quite another is for the upper administration to be clear about how they will be shielding us from arbitrary punishment when we do say something protected and are attacked for it, which will inevitably happen. So that's the first question.
Okay. I put the note out last week about academic freedom because I do believe in it. And I think it has to be kind of a staple of any successful university. I'm actually thinking about putting out another note to expand on that a little bit and just make it very clear to everybody, because everybody keeps asking me about this. And so whatever I put in the first note wasn't sufficient to convince you. So I'll probably put something else out, Andrew. The CPI asked me last week about the Chicago principles, and I was not familiar with them. I haven't been around education my whole life. I hadn't heard of the Chicago principles, but I'm familiar with them now. And I think they're fantastic. I think they say a whole lot of great things in there. And so I may talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about our own university policy on academic freedom, which is actually also pretty good. And just highlight for everybody the fact that we are all bought into this. This isn't something that each faculty member has to defend. It's something everybody has to defend, from the president on down. And I don't think there's any disagreement with that at all.
Thank you. So here's another question from the chat. So some of your comments raise the question of whether the regions are considered as part of the university that does the hiring or outside of it. Could you address this? And I will say it's been a matter of discussion on Faculty Discuss as well.
Well, the regions are not in the university hiring process. They are in the assignment of tenure process. They have state assigned authorities to determine tenure. And so saying that they're not involved at all would not be true, because anybody we want to hire with tenure eventually goes to the regions. But when it comes to hiring for a university position, the regions can't say you can't hire that person. They are not in the hiring process. I had the chance to, when I met with the regions, I told them the fact that, please understand, is what I said to them, that the fact that the university president was involved in a department level hire is a gigantic red flag. Certainly didn't happen in my 7 years as a dean. So I think the regents don't expect to be in the hiring process. Individual regents may express an opinion, but as I said before, the response to that should be thank you for that. We appreciate the input.
So Tracy, I have some more questions, but I know there's lots of people with their hands up. Would the president be willing to take some of these questions that we have in the chat and answer them afterwards?
Sure.
Great. Matt, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, President Welsh. I'd like to return to the MGT report, and not because I'm looking for the next headline, but because I am interested in getting our feet back under us and protecting this university. On August 10th, the Inside Higher Ed published a series of allegations that this report was, in fact, a fabrication, that there was no true independent analysis of what Texas A&M needed, that the recommendations came plural, not just from President Banks, but from her cabinet. Now, any of us in academics would just simply think this is fraud. And that report had ramifications for Texas A&M, obviously tens of thousands of hours of people working to discuss the report and its issues with it. There were apparently, according to Inside Higher Ed, specific things put into the report for which there was no desire to even enact them, but they were, in a sense, intended to give throw faculty bones. But of course, that meant many hours being put to fight, as it were, defend the university, protect the university against these recommendations. Now, I know moving forward is important, but I think it is also important that we know who participated in this report. And if these allegations are so, if they're correct, what is the path forward for these actions? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have not read that article. I hadn't seen it. All I can tell you is that the people who were at the university level working this process, I was a member of that SIC group that was led by Vice President Hartman, or COO Hartman at the time. And so I saw that group of people routinely and interacted with them. Nobody ever told me what the answers were. We had full input. There were other areas that I didn't touch and have no idea what happened in. But I guess my first concern right now would be, what do we do? Undo it all? I mean, I don't. There were opportunities for people to get engaged in this. We have everybody's input still on file with the different initiatives. I don't know how the writing of the actual report was done. I think the people from MGT would probably object to a characterization that they didn't have a hand in writing it. But I don't know. I haven't talked to them. What is your preferred path forward here? What are we hoping to do?
I would ask the Senate overall to consider that. I won't give you my own specific recommendations.
Well, okay.
And I will tell you that I have spoken to General Welsh about the Senate being involved in whatever comes out of that committee. So,
Yeah, you guys will see everything that comes out of it.
Deb.
So just I wanted to start by saying howdy, and really appreciate you giving the time to all the different university stakeholders, between faculty, staff, students, researchers. And I, when I'm talking within CPI or when I'm talking to my faculty senate colleagues, there are some common themes that seem to be emerging. One of them is, and I think, some of the senators that spoke previously kind of, mentioned that as well, was if this McElroy debacle was the only one-off event, or if there were, recurring issues like that never really came to the limelight because no newspaper talked about it. So do you think it makes sense to have some kind of investigation into past appointments at different levels, whether there was, where the system misfired in those cases as well? And then the other part is when I'm looking at Chancellor Sharp's email or his admission that things went wrong, are we just going to blame it on two individuals and move on? Or are we going to do some soul searching to figure out if there were more than two people involved in this debacle, both in the current situation as well as in the past?
Yeah, Deb, I'll just give you my view. In my opinion, going back and examining other hirings and doing some kind of forensic examination to see if we can find wrongdoing doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, I don't think it's a good use of resources. I don't know what we're hoping to find. I don't know the purpose. In this particular case, I am very confident that the discussions that led to changing the term of employment from 5 years to 3 years and then to 1 year were made by Kathy and Jose. And that the final decision to go to 1 year was just like in the report, Kathy telling Jose to change to 1 year. I don't know why she did that. I don't understand why she did it, but she made that decision. And I think there has been accountability for that. Jose held himself accountable. She held herself accountable. And I think that was appropriate. But if we're looking for more people to blame, I'm just not that guy. If I thought that would make A&M better, great. But I don't think it will. I think it just keeps us in this fog for longer. I'll tell you this, since I've been in this role, nobody's called me and told me anything to do. I talk to the regents, I see them somewhere and talk to them. It's like talking to somebody who, I know who they are, but they're not directing me to do anything. The chancellor's never called me and said, I want you to do this. It just hasn't happened yet. And maybe I'm still in the glow of birthing here and they're not bothering me yet, but I don't think so. I think they know what they're going to get as an answer.
So if I can do a follow-up comment on that, all these comments that you are making are based on the premise that what we know from the OGC report is perfectly, valid. And I'm sure our OGC is a very professional organization. We have very experienced people in there. But, when I write a report, I expect the author to be there, a contact information to be there for follow-up. If you want follow-up information, there should be a contact information there that you can follow up with. I look at this report, there is no date on it, there is no author on it, there is no contact information on it, and nobody to, not even a direction that says who we should be contacting in case we want some clarification on certain issues.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm worried about the legitimacy of the OGC report because of all these flaws in there.
Yeah. Well, Deb, the OGC, Mr. Bonilla was clearly the author of the report. He conducted it personally, the investigation personally, and authored the report. I'm sure his team helped him with that, but he was involved in every step of the way. And that office is who you need to contact if you have other questions.
But what prevents them from putting this information in the report? Why don't they put that?
I don't know the answer to that.
So that's why, I'm questioning the premise that whatever we learned from the OGC report is the truth. There might be some other ulterior motives there that we are not aware of. And that's why I think it is important that we investigate instead of just blaming two people. Otherwise, you're leaving bad apples in the cart.
Yeah, I'm not telling you not to investigate. That's your call. I am comfortable that the story is out. I am comfortable that I believe what happened is what's in that report. And so I really am shifting to moving forward. I don't think continuing to investigate this incident and try and find more guilty people. The inclusion of the emails, the texts, etc., I thought was significant. I think, and they bothered me. I mean, I read the stuff and got bothered the same way you did.
Yes, absolutely. I do appreciate getting all that information. But to me, it looks like we have only looked at the tip of the iceberg. Because if you look at the beginning part of the report, it mentions 5 individuals that they investigated, but the text messages and emails are only of 3 people. So I don't know why the text messages and emails of the other 2 people were not included in that report.
Yeah, well, you feel free to reach out to Mr. Bonilla.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your feedback.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Ted.
Daniel.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, President Welsh. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Well, I just heard Adam slamming NK. I want to make sure everyone understands what the story is. So NK is being sued by some professor at UT for supporting a DEI program. So NK had this role in developing a DEI program well before SB 17. A lot of faculty at Texas A&M are in favor of that program that allowed us to hire diverse faculty. NK has been a voice of reason, an adult in the room during this chaotic administration of Kathy, and I didn't want to let that go without comment.
Thank you, Daniel.
Harry?
Thank you, Tracy. President Welsh, thank you for taking a pause to say you're going to look at what was suggested in the path forward and see what's working and what's not. I have a question or a recommendation, suggestion. If you do another reorganization of the libraries, I would suggest you include all of those who were affected and displaced, including our colleagues who, in order to protect their faculty status, went to departments, because I have a feeling they would have preferred to remain as librarians at whole. So I would hope that if anything changes with the libraries, that all of the stakeholders who are directly impacted would get to have some sort of voice.
Thank you, Terry. That's a great suggestion.
And I'm going to skip to Matt because he hasn't had a question yet, and then we'll go back to the people who are second. Matt, go ahead.
Thank you, President Welsh. Hello, I'm from the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and I was curious, along with my 5-year-old, I was curious if you had been informed at all about that. If you had been informed at all, sorry about that, kids, about the Applin Center, the new program coming from the owner of the Buc-ee's chain. This was another initiative of Dr. Banks. What you have been made aware of, your perspective on that as it stands. It was described to be a huge opportunity, not only for College of Ag, but also Mays Business School, and ultimately for the entire university. So what, if any, exposure, awareness, perspective might you share with those of us in those colleges who are anticipating a potential part to play on the future of that initiative? Sorry about my children.
Never apologize for your children, Matt. I think what I've heard is what you just said, that this is a great opportunity, that there's a public-private partnership. Susan Balabini, who's on the call here, can give you all the details of current status of things, because she's overseeing that project and partnering with Mr. Applin on it. But I do think it's a great opportunity. And I think the things are moving forward on track. We're on schedule so far. I think one of the things we have to do up front is make sure we get with Mr. Applin and confirm exactly what the benefits are going to be to each of the colleges you mentioned, so that we can ensure we have the resources in place to allow you to benefit from the game plan. So as far as the details of the project, if you need them, I can ask Susan to comment, but if not, we're planning to press ahead with it.
Andrew, do you want to read a question from the chat?
Sure. So there's a question. Give me a chance to find it. I've been saving them, so if we don't get to them, we'll get them to the president. This body has made a stance against many of the recent changes in administration, including centralization of resources, removing the dean of faculty's role, how librarians were treated, etc. However, the previous administration was largely dismissive of faculty senate resolutions. What is your stance on shared governance and the role of the faculty senate?
I'm a huge fan of shared governance. I come from an institution that when I first got here and told my faculty that shared governance is kind of how the U.S. military operates, they laughed at me. They thought I was lying to them. And as I told them, try walking into a room full of Army Rangers or Navy SEALs or Air Force fighter pilots and tell them how they're going to die tomorrow without asking for their input. Shared governance is a way of life. It's how I've always tried to lead. And I believe at a university, it's essential because there is no university without you. The faculty has to be involved in things. Sometimes there is a feeling, though, that shared governance, that people believe shared governance is almost individual veto authority. It's certainly not that. But you have to be in the conversation at the front end of issues. You have to have the chance to shape the decision space. And when a decision is made, you have every right to know what it is and what the logic was behind that decision. As Tracy mentioned before, we're probably not always going to agree on everything. Nobody does. But everybody should know what the logic was. There shouldn't be any surprises. And I don't think there have to be. I just don't accept the fact that we can't share all this information. And so that's how I feel about shared governance. I think it's the only way successful organizations operate.
Great. Andrew, can you do one more chat question?
Sure. This is probably, I'll do this one because I think it affects a lot of people. And it's basically, what are your feelings on centralization at the university, and especially this dotted versus solid line reporting that doesn't seem to be working very well across the university?
Yeah, Andrew, I think in my opinion right now is it may be different in different areas. There may be some of the support functions that are centralized that are working pretty well. There may be others that are not. I had a limited perspective because all I know is how they were affecting the Bush School. And from the Bush School perspective, they actually worked okay. There was no major disconnects. There was no major problem, but we're a much smaller school than some of the other colleges are across the university. And so this centralization idea is one that virtually every consulting firm that you talk to, if you ask about reorganizing a major organization, they will tell you to centralize your functions. And the idea is that you can create efficiencies, you can create cost savings, and you can reinvest in other areas. I have been in multiple organizations that have done this. It's never saved me any money or time, and it typically adds frustration. And so fundamentally, I am a believer in the strong college model, not the strong university model. And so I will have to see, but I don't know the details of how it's working across the university yet. That's what this assessment will let us see. And where I sat before this job, I actually saw it working fairly well in a couple of the areas and maybe not so well in one of the others. There's a lot of frustration about it, I'll tell you that. And there's frustration inside the functional areas as well. It's not just the colleges being frustrated by the support. And it's actually one of the easiest ones in some cases to undo, because most of the people didn't leave where they were sitting.
Okay, and next, Asha, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, President Welch, for coming and talking to us and listening to us. I just wanted to bring up another comment, another article that just hit the chronicle.com, and it's on sex discrimination complaints at Qatar campus, it says it's the latest in the string of controversies. It seems like we have continuing accusations of the administration in one campus or the other constantly. So what do you plan to do? This just hit the news just recently. I was just reading it as you were talking. So what are your plans to address these kinds of continuing accusations, and what do you plan to do? How do you plan to handle these?
Yeah, Asha, thanks for putting that in the chat. I hadn't seen that either. I just opened it up when you added it to the chat. We just have to address them one at a time, and then try and figure out how do we get after the larger climate that's causing this kind of frustration. I don't know anything about these cases at all right now. So I'll read the article when we're done and see what I think about it. But I think the whole issue of respect is where all of this starts. It's just a matter of treating people with respect, all people, all the time, and making sure that we do that with each other. I don't think it's magic. I just think it's attention to this particular detail over and over and over again. And we can't tolerate it when we see lack of respect. And you see it, I see it, we see it everywhere. You know, I was really entertained. I was telling the executive committee about a conversation in my first week in this job and on the faculty listserv where a group of people were criticizing me for being on vacation during this crisis with my family. And another group of people were defending me. Thank you for that, by the way, for spending time with my family, all while I was not on vacation with my family. And so we got to get the facts first, and then we've got to face ourselves honestly and say, here is the situation. This is not who we should be. And just demand more out of each other. I think we can. I just believe that this idea of core values is so fundamentally important to this university and who it wants to be and who we want to be, that we have to just keep talking about it and not tolerate anybody being treated without respect. But it takes all of us all the time.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We'll go to Raimundo now.
Oh, this is my second round, and I will shut up. I promise you, President West. First of all, I would like to thank you because I think that this conversation is going a long way towards reassuring people that at least there is an intention to look deep into what we have been doing right and wrong and try to at least stabilize the ship for the next permanent leadership. Now, even though I kind of like commented and criticized a bit your comments, you know, being a little bit more tactical than strategic, I understand your point. But I want to make a comment. Actually, I will go back to a tactical comment. And my comment is the following. I think that, I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but my intuition tells me that some of the issues that happened, for example, with McElroy, maybe could have been prevented with the strongest provost position we had for several decades, traditionally strong provost office, right? And one of the first things that Kathy did when she became president was to kind of like, you know, frankly, weaken the provost office by creating this extra position of vice president for faculty affairs, right? And to me, I think that like a strong provost probably wouldn't have led, if they had known, well, actually, I take it back. It could have been that other people, if they had known, they could probably have prevented Kathy from doing what she did. However, having said that, I think that a strong institutional provost office could have acted in general as a sounding board for a president when it comes to making decisions that radically change and affect entire units and entire faculty groups, right? So I hope that this move and this change in the organization is actually examined carefully, because we may actually in the future need a strong provost office with, you know, active influence on faculty affairs, the way that the provost office was, you know, working for a long time, to make our operation better and to keep our faculty better protected. So that's just an opinion, but I thank you for how forthcoming you have been in this session.
Thank you, Raimundo. Just so you know, I have already spoken with Provost Sams. I agree with you. I think the provost has to be a strong figure and a strong leadership and play a strong leadership role in a university. I mean, it must be that way. as a chief academic officer, 90% of the activity and operations that go on at a university are under the provost.
Great. Andrew, do you want to read one chat question?
Yes, this one, there's one, I'm going to read it. Just a second, let me find it. So the University of Houston LBTQ Center was recently announced to be closed as a result of Senate Bill 17, and then that was rescinded. Do you have any knowledge whether or not these types of centers can remain on our campus open?
Andrew, the only thing I remember from the OGC webinar that we attended was that anything that is a student organization can continue. If it's a university organization related specifically to DEI and it's titled that way, then it goes away. Now, we've asked a series, as all of you know, of specific questions about things like that, that we sent to the general counsel. And we're hoping when we get the final answer, all that stuff will be answered. They did not discuss the specifics in that session we had 2 weeks ago.
Okay, Jorge, you're up, and then maybe we'll just do one last question from the chat after that. Go ahead, Jorge.
Thank you. And I hope my comments are not going to get me into trouble. So, President, don't you find odd that the Lieutenant Governor had time to take a phone call and then talk to the Chancellor about Professor Alonso, about what she said in a seminar? I mean, I find that odd. I mean, the Lieutenant Governor is in charge of the second largest state. I mean, he's the second in command, right? He's a second in command of the second largest state in the nation. I mean, talk about the population of Texas, over 30 million, right? So, and I think that's what comes down to it. I mean, he had the time, even though he has many responsibilities, he had the time to go after a faculty member. And I think that's why so many faculty members are so concerned that it might happen again, right? Because even though, you know, he has so many responsibilities, he found the time to pursue an agenda item. What is your comment? I mean, should we feel like protected by the university or by the system, or do you think it's going to happen again because we cannot do anything about it?
Well, Jorge, you'll have to talk to the Lieutenant Governor about how busy his schedule is. I don't know that. What I want to make sure of is that if it did happen again, that the first thing that occurs is that we take a deep breath and not just react. And then get a couple of different people into the conversation so we can ensure that common sense is the first standard we apply. And in this particular case, talk to Dr. Alonso when she gets back. There's no rush to do anything. Find out what happened and what she said. Call the folks at UTMB and ask them why they did the censure. What was their logic? If they tell you that 10 of their own members were in the audience and heard her say something, that's a different story than if some student called somebody. But get the facts before we react to these things. There was no immediacy to this other than somebody maybe, I don't know, somebody thinking the Lieutenant Governor needs an answer, but I don't think he needs an answer that fast. So let's take a deep breath. Let's get the facts right. And let's take care of our faculty. If something was done wrong, we can deal with that. But if not, let's make sure we don't overreact to.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew, you want to do a chat question?
Yeah, I'll do one more chat question. So we're the faculty senate, but there are a large number of individuals that teach classes like Hullable U, for example, who are either former faculty or maybe staff or even graduate students that feel they no longer have as the academic freedom protections that faculty do in their day-to-day teaching and research. So what can these individuals think of in terms of academic freedom and support of the institution?
I think academic freedom applies to anybody we put in a classroom.
And I know I said we were going to end here, but there's been a lot about demanding the UTMB to have a response, I think it might be important. I was going to put this in sort of the new business, but I have spoken with the speaker of the Faculty Senate at UTMB. And he has said that right after this event, the president spoke out in favor of academic freedom. And so the speaker was confused as potentially why it was that in conflict of what happened. And he determined that there is no such policy of censure in the university at UTMB. And that was just an email that went out from their course coordinator to everybody on campus in the class. Trevor.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. I also spoke with Chris Messenger, the president of the Faculty Senate at UTMB. In my duties as president of the Texas Council of Faculty Senates, I was asking them to apologize. They don't have anything to apologize for per se. This was a rogue email that we responded to. Like I said, we need more facts. We don't know exactly where it came from. It was a large class. It was an announcement in Blackboard. The Texas Tribune picked it up because it looked very official with formal censure and big block letters. There is no policy, tribunal, committee for anything from formal censure from UTMB in any way, shape, or form. Somebody went rogue. We responded to it. More story to come out.
Katrina?
I'm sorry, I know you said no more questions, but I was holding off kind of listening to all the commentary and stuff. Mark, thanks for joining us, and it's a shame that you left as chair of the search committee to take greater roles at the university. We miss you. I'm a cultural anthropologist, and I teach about cultural diversity and ethics, and I'm kind of worried about doing that. But one of the classes I teach, we use project-based learning, and one of the case studies we use is the GM case study. I don't know if many of you are familiar with it. I'll cut it short, but basically they ended up firing 10 of their top brass because of a culture of incompetence and neglect, and just firing those 10 individuals at the top of GM did not change the culture of incompetence and neglect. And there's multiple steps that one must look at as a cultural anthropologist. I'm speaking that look at culture and how culture changes. And it worries me that we think that just by firing 2 people and maybe doing some listening sessions, the culture is not necessarily going to change. The culture involves things like symbols, traditions, the way we learn the culture, the chain of command, our formats for communication, our fear, that kind of thing. And so I'm hoping that, this is more of a statement really, I'm hoping that the university looks at the culture as a sum total, not as a negative or a positive, but as a way of looking at the culture in order to change it for the better. Because right now, I know I shared with my caucus, I've been incredibly upset, fearful, and also embarrassed. I'd like to see the culture change. And I'd like to see tangible, proven steps to change the culture rather than just firing a few people and doing some listening sessions. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. That's fair. I think the big thing for all of us is that nothing changes unless we want it to. And so we need to figure out what is the way we move forward together, so that culture becomes what we want it to be and nothing else is allowed. And I think it's step after step, day by day. I don't think there's a magic pill we can all take and have it happen. It's just a matter of kind of putting our minds in the same place and going to that place. I'm when it comes to culture, I'm kind of a rock on water or a water on rock kind of guy. You just have to keep flowing. You just have to keep moving and keep reinforcing the things that you value. I think you guys do that all the time in your classrooms. You do it routinely. And we need to do it as a university. And where we find problems, we need to eliminate those problems and get back to doing things the right way. I don't know any other way of going about this. There's no shock treatment that'll be successful with it. It's just a matter of deciding where we want to go and then going there.
Okay, well, President Welsh, we greatly appreciate you taking the time to join us today to answer questions concerning faculty matters. We really value it. As I mentioned before, I've heard great things about your leadership, and so I'm looking forward to hopefully us moving to a better place.
Well, Tracy, thank you for having me. Thanks to all of you for everything you do for Texas A&M and for our student body and for everybody else around here. Thanks for being great.
Thank you. Okay, so next up, we also have joining us today is the Committee on Generative AI. And given that this is the last Faculty Senate meeting before classes start, it's important that we be aware of what's going on in this space in terms of the university. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Give me a second here, and I'm gonna try to share my screen and get the presentation up. Can you all see that okay? Perfect. All right. Well, as Tracy mentioned, I'm representing our Committee on AI in Learning and Education efforts, and I'm being joined in this presentation by Deborah Fowler and Juan Garza. And just to start off, I want to get with some definitions with respect to what we're talking about. I'm not going to read these to you, but I just want you to know that the AI definition comes from George Siemens, and the large language model definition comes from TAMU, and then the machine learning is from Spencer. And that just kind of gets us all on the same page with respect to what we're talking about, and really focused on the speed and pervasiveness with which these technologies have been adopted by our faculty, our students, and the broader public. So just something to be aware of. Okay. So one of the things that people are really focused on is obviously the large language models and their ability to generate text. But that's not the only thing that these tools can do. These tools can very quickly create computer code. So you can ask it to write a Python program and to perform a particular task. It can generate a drawing or some other type of image, obviously writing. It can help you design a course. It can go out and find materials to help you teach a specific subject and put that together. It can provide feedback. Give me some feedback on this essay that this student wrote. Automate a task. Again, personalized instruction. So this is something that the Khan Academy is working with OpenAI on. Personalized instruction with respect to things that they have, and then also immersive learning experiences. So these are very powerful tools, and we need to be aware of it. Again, one of the things that the faculty have been very concerned about is obviously academic integrity. How do we ensure that our students are not using these tools for assessments? And so one of the things that we have done is come up with some potential syllabus statements that the faculty can use, and those are on the CTE website under how to respond to generative AI. And those are listed under the teaching with emergent technology. And there are two statements that you can choose from. One is a little bit more permissive, and the other is kind of locking down that you don't want these tools to be used. But regardless, it's very important that you add this information to your syllabus and or have a deliberate discussion with your class at the beginning of the semester to tell them what your policy is with respect to using AI tools. There are also some videos that have been created from a student perspective, from a faculty perspective, and as well as overall, and those are also listed on the CTE website. And so that's another opportunity for you to have a discussion with your students. One of the things that you want to be aware of is that some of the tools, whether they're from Turnitin or any of the other providers that supposedly detect AI, are not that reliable. There's a fair amount of false positives associated with those. You want to make sure that before you use those to accuse a student of teaching, that that's just a first step. That's just the first step in having a discussion. There was actually an article in the Washington Post today. I think it was titled something like, "So you've been accused of cheating with AI." And it goes through and gives a set of steps that students can follow. So students are concerned about being accused of this. Faculty are concerned about students having used these tools, but again, make sure it's a conversation. And there's a process of updating Rule 20 to include falsification and fabrication, where AI is explicitly mentioned as in those particular rules. So with respect to research, which is really important from a faculty perspective, a lot of our peer and aspirational peer institutions have guidelines. Federal agencies are in the process of developing some of these guidelines. And so the Division of Research has a resource page that you can go to and look at some of these other institution and federal guidelines. We're also working on developing best practices for AI at Texas A&M. And one of the things that the Division of Research is planning, along with the Office of the Provost, is some AI-focused town halls here in the fall to have a discussion about how to use these tools and some resources that could be valuable for faculty. The Graduate and Professional School has some guidance related to theses and dissertations, going through the process of soliciting information from the GOC deans about how to integrate these tools and what to do and not to do with respect to that. And then also looking at responsible conduct of research. Again, this is very important for our graduate students because a lot of the research that's done on campus is carried out by our graduate students. So researching with AI, using AI for research, how do you use that responsibly? And then dissemination, whether it's creating a presentation, creating a manuscript, so on and so forth. And then specifically, we want to focus on the thesis and dissertation because it's important that that be an independent professional effort. And so we want to make sure that our students are contributing significantly to that effort. And the chair and committee needs to oversee the content associated with that professional or graduate degree. Again, it's very important, just like in an individual classroom, that a faculty member is going to have a discussion with their students. It's very important that the faculty have a discussion with their students about the use of these tools as well. With that, I'd like to ask my colleague Juan Garza to comment a little on how we're going to build the infrastructure here at Texas A&M with respect to generative AI tools.
So I'll give you some background, specifically of the couple of things that have to be made aware of as we move forward as we start thinking about infrastructure within AI. A couple of things to know is data lakes and data pipelines. These come really from data engineering background. They're large systems that handle large amounts of volume of data to be able to be used. For the most part, they're either cloud-based or hybrid-based approaches. And then you have to create unique data pipelines. Traditionally in data engineering, it's transform, modify, and load into a system. But data pipelines in the AI infrastructure also include exploration, training, and deployment. The training is a unique approach as we move forward in order to be able to train the models and basically predict what they're going to be able to be doing. The shift has happened over the last couple of years, like Dr. Johnson was saying, as we move forward. When we start talking about the infrastructure approach, the technology is only part of it. We have industry partners, I'll talk about them, that we're working with to have an understanding of what type of large systems we can build to be able to gather information. Two of them would be operational data or student data. But we also have to remember that there has to be leadership policy associated to it. What is the leadership approach of what we should be putting into those systems, as well as what are the policies that are still in place to be able to protect those systems? So we have federal requirements, whether it's FERPA and policy guidelines that we still have to maintain. Dr. Johnson mentioned about individuals moving some information up to the cloud or to a cloud solution. We have to make sure that those systems have the protections in place and privacy in place to ensure that we're not releasing information we're not supposed to be. Then the governance is an expansion. The Gardner Group talked about this a few weeks ago in a conference. In this governance, it's the classic three that exists for policy and regulatory requirements, along with security and data protection. But it also expands it into transparency and accountability when it comes to start talking about infrastructure needs. Do the models actually do what they intend to do?
And then can we basically validate that information? Instead of just throwing something to a generative AI model, what is the way and the approach from a governance standpoint to basically validate that that information is accurate, it's unbiased? That sort of ties into a little bit of the ethics. Just because we have the ability and the technologies out there to basically gather tons of information, should we actually put it in there? Are we violating certain principles on data protections for individuals and running models in analysis form? Those are conversations that are not necessarily technical, but that's an infrastructure discussion that needs to take place. And it's a shared governance discussion that you guys talked about earlier that needs to be discussed as we move forward. And internally here in technology services, we are working with the big three, you guys can guess them, I'm not going to name them, but industry partners, because they're basically wanting to have conversations with us as we move forward to basically build out a AI infrastructure within Texas A&M. But one of the key things that we need to keep track of as we move forward is we need to have additional workforce development. Using generative AI models, whether they're industry built or internal to Texas A&M, requires additional set of resources and skill sets that we're still learning and trying to understand. With that, we've sent up to 13 developers internally just to understand how the OpenAI frameworks worked within the big three systems that are using it now. But you also have to have data scientists, you also have data profilers, you have to have data scientists, and a whole group of information and the infrastructure to basically build it. And also it's depending on what type of model. Are we going to be talking about machine learning task specific models or generative AI models, especially internally at Texas A&M? It requires a new set of skill sets and structure that, quite frankly, industries basically beat us to it. And we're trying to catch up. Next, Deborah will be following up. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, so Dr. Deborah Fowler, the Executive Director of our Center for Teaching Excellence, will talk a little bit about some of our educational efforts.
So some of the other things that the committee's been doing is that we sent about 5 to 6 individuals to a workshop in Dallas that was sponsored by the Global Research Alliance in AI and Learning and Education. And it was based on their participation there that they suggested that we go ahead and become a charter member in this organization. So you can see that it gives us the opportunity to request some research if we'd like to request it about what's happening in the AI arena at other institutions. We also can make lots of connections during some of these workshops that we go to. And you'll note that they have an upcoming conference, one online and one in Arizona State. And then they have these series that they call AI sense making, where you can actually get in conversations with faculty and administrators from other institutions and help us. This is a conversation we all need to have. We're all trying to figure this out. And so it gives us an opportunity to participate in some of those conversations. So one of the other proposals that Grail has suggested is that to be what they call an AI first university, to really try to get a handle around it, you need to have all these categories that you're paying attention to. One, you just saw a couple of them actually that were all 3 at the top that were listed on one slide. And then we're talking about the teaching methods that we're addressing, and then the learning experience. There's so much you can do because of the feedback that you can give to students that they can enhance their own learning. And then the research component as well you saw. So we are attempting to address all these arenas, and we would welcome your input. Another thing, George Siemens was our keynote at the Transformational Teaching and Learning Conference this spring. And he talked about key skills that we need to be equipping our students with so that they're prepared for future roles. And of course, you will get a copy of these slides. And I think, you might find it beneficial just to be thinking about as you're teaching your courses, what are some of these skills we need to be incorporating now? And there's a second slide of these skills, Michael. Some of them you might be familiar with, some of them you may not typically think about, but these are really, really good skills to be trying to incorporate in your courses. Then as we talk a little bit more about what this might look like, Michael touched upon this a little bit, the personalized learning that I mentioned a minute ago. It allows a lot of creative expression for the students. The collaborative learning can happen in ways actually, electronically, if you will. But we want to continue to help make that happen. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Michael. So what the CTE did is we took the kind of mission and vision that the committee had put together, and we said, okay, what specifically do we need to be doing to align with that? And so these are some goals that we created. And again, you can review them when you take a look at the slides, but we're doing everything that we can to try to support you as we all try to figure out what this world looks like with AI. A couple of things that we've already done. We did a new faculty orientation session about how to incorporate AI into your course for the new faculty. It will be offered again in the fall. For other faculty that are interested, we have selected several faculty fellows that are developing tools for you to be able to utilize in your courses. There's the one in particular that is for political science. 207, I believe, that's on the website underneath those other tools. Very worth taking a look at, because Dwight Robler steps you through the process of how you might think about designing your course and talking to the students about what they need to be thinking about, and the fact that we really do want them to be critical thinkers and not just to go out and create the answer through some of these tools. We will continue to offer workshops and departmental training as appropriate. We'll have a faculty learning community, which you can apply for, which is more sustained, and we'll have some type of bursary with it so that you can attend a conference or something like that. We have acquired these Teaching with AI course from Auburn University. It's scripted, of course, with Auburn, a little bit of SEC examples in it. But we have asked for licenses at 100 more each time, so we can see what your interest is. Again, it's very specific to making changes in your courses and giving you opportunity to go out and practice the tools. And so that's another thing that's available. And then we have some graduate students that are working on some other projects that were funded by the Galloway Foundation.
Wonderful. And with that, I just want to take a minute to say thank you to the other members of our committee, including Speaker Hammond. So I appreciate that. And with that, we will take your questions, and I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you as we do that.
Go ahead, Raimundo.
So first of all, I really would like to thank the committee. This is really exciting. It's scary and exciting at the same time. I want to learn how to teach with AI, and I just sent an email to Deborah because I want to learn everything I can learn. But I have a question more about infrastructure. So we have already partnerships with different, technology providers like Microsoft, Google, etc. They are all developing LLM technologies like, ChatGPT or Palm, etc. This is not really related to teaching, and maybe we have to have a separate committee that looks at the research side of these new type of technologies. But my question is the following: there are a lot of concerns about leaking stuff out to the big lake of LLMs, and the temptation is really, I have used them, right? And my students use them. Everybody uses LLMs because we're playing with them. So there is this concern about actually training large language models with stuff that we produce at the university that we may not want the whole world to know about. I'm not talking about FAIRPA related information. I'm talking about research, products that we generate and that we play with. I also think that LLMs could be a very powerful technology that we should embrace full on and that we should use in our research as much as possible. LLMs and other types of technologies. Are there plans of getting, partnerships with Google or Microsoft or whatever to develop like Texas A&M internal LLMs that we could safely use and play with?
So the strategy, Raimundo, is to do something like that. I just wasn't going to name the players, but we are having.
You don't have to name the players, but
we are having conversations. Our chief technology officer is having those conversations. I talked about transparency and ethics. If there's individuals involved in some of those discussions as we move forward, we welcome them. Because at the end of the day, it's really for the users, right? We can't go with this, we will build it, they will come. We need input to find out what we build and how we use it as we move forward. But we are talking to those.
I would be more than happy to be involved. I think it's a very exciting new world, and you know, at least I'm glad that we're talking about exciting stuff and not about other stuff that is going on at the university. This is way more exciting. This is the future, and you know, I'm super enthusiastic and excited about what is coming, research and teaching wise, with AI. And you know, I would like to thank everyone for actually looking ahead and trying to chart a way forward for us.
Katrina?
I'm also super excited. I spent many hours over the summer redesigning some of my modules to incorporate generative AI. Some of my students are already creating videos and stuff with this technology, which is really cool. But I think about examples of intended and unintended consequences, and the phrase, if you build it, they will come. Just take a simple example like the OFO bikes on campus and how they went awry simply because the cultural norms kind of overshadowed any kind of technological benefits that they had. So I see that Venn diagram with the processes and the leadership and the ethics and everything, but I want to put like a big cloud over the top of that. And this seems to be, I am harping on this today, I'm sorry about that, but I need to put a kind of like a bubble over the top of that whole thing that says culture. And if people are not mindful of the fact that even if a technology is great, culture can override and go in really funky ways. And I'd like us to be mindful of the fact that even if we build it and they come, then they may well still not adopt it or use it in funky ways or use it in ways that are not what we expect. And so yeah, Juan, you know where I'm going because yes, we've worked together before, right?
So with Dr. Laporte, just for clarity, what I said is we don't want to build it and they will come. We want to have a partnership. So we build a solution that's basically usable for everybody. It was, so if that wasn't understood, that's on me, but that's what I meant.
I misinterpreted you completely, but we should be mindful that we build stuff and it's super cool and engineers love it. And then the real people start using it and it's not used the way that you expect.
We're all real people, Dr. Laporte.
I know. Oh, and engineers are people, I know that.
Farzan?
Thank you. I was wondering if you can also send some guidelines to the department for detection of these kind of violations. Seems like we have a process going for the honors office and the student rules are outdated, but faculty are still in the dark about, okay, how do they do it? What exactly would they trust? I mean, there's some false positive and some error with these detection tools, as you mentioned. So what do faculty do? What are considered kind of most reliable ways of finding these violations? It's inevitable that, you know, all the great beauties of AI and, you know, the promise that it's going to be abused by students potentially. So we have to still do something about it.
Right. So I think that one of the things that you'll want to do is, again, like you would anything, have a conversation with a student and look at the evidence. And specifically, if you're not sure, that's really where you need to have a conversation. If someone turns in something that looks very different from what you would generally think their writing is, and it's obvious that that's not what they're doing, there could be a couple reasons for that. One, they could have gotten someone else to help them with it and someone else wrote it for them, or they could be using generative AI. I don't think it changes dramatically the process because of AI. I think you just need to be mindful of it, that this might be something that you need to be more explicit with telling your students isn't okay. Most students would easily say, it's not okay to have my roommate write my paper for me, but you need to also be explicit that it's not okay to have Chat GPT write your paper for you. I don't know if I answered your question or
yes and no. So can faculty trust the current tools, for example, the Turnitin function to detect?
I would not. No, I think that, again, if you're going to use that, it could just be a first pass, and then you're going to want to look at the actual work and then have that conversation with the student.
Yeah, people are going to have difficulty following that, Michael. I understand where you're coming from, but you need to provide more clear guidelines, I think, to faculty to help them out. Otherwise, you're not going to get any reports of violations. And I don't think we should be fine with that. I think this wonderful tool provides opportunities for abuse.
Again, I think you have to be mindful of the fact that there is no technological solution at this time to help you identify the use of generative AI in writing. So it's an unfortunate situation, but right now there's no technological solution that we can be confident in.
And my main research is AI, and even if we did get one, then the next version of the generative AI would just be to go around that. So, Clint.
I was just wondering what constitutes plagiarism when it's artificially intelligently provided?
Well, again, I think that goes back to you having a conversation and making your expectations of your students well known. So if you say that generative AI cannot be used in this class and the student uses it, then that's not in line with the expectations, and that would be a violation. If you say using ChatGPT is okay as long as you tell me the prompt and you show me how you've updated what was generated from the tool to make it your own essay, that's a completely different discussion. So again, it really is about expectations and making sure that you're clear in your guidelines as a faculty member.
Raimundo?
Yeah, so I was kind of like afraid of LLMs instead, and now I embrace them. I think that our students will work with AIs. I mean, we're talking about the future. We're talking about the future of work across all domains of human expression. Engineering, philosophy, sociology, the arts, doesn't matter, right? We have to find, I'm really excited about the fact that CTE and others are thinking hard about how to teach with AI. I think that we should, teach our students how to interact and work productively with AIs, because that is going to be the future of their profession, whatever profession they choose. It's going to be very difficult. I think it's a self-defeating activity to try to detect, generative work, because as Tracy says, one of the things that AI is really good at is at defeating countermeasures, right? It always learns how not to be detected, right? So it is hard for us. We have to change the way we teach. We may try to prevent people from using these technologies as much as we can, but I think that is trying to stop a wave coming from the ocean on the beach with your hands in front of you. I think that things are going to happen regardless. We should embrace it and find better ways of equipping our students to deal with something that is going to transform their lives way more than probably any other technology that has been developed or invented at any moment in our history. So that's my comment.
And I will comment also that last December, when I was teaching capstone, I asked my students what they thought about it and if it should be taught in the classroom and used. And way back in December, they said, absolutely, this is the future. And if you don't do that, you're doing us a disservice, because we're not going to be as capable when we get out as others who do have that experience. And in last semester, when I taught capstone, there was a project that even used generative AI in it to help teach, to help people improve their public speaking. So it would give them sort of real-time feedback That was quite good. Okay. Oksana?
Yes, so my question is if Writing Center was somehow involved in your work, because I'm teaching writing intensive course in math, and I met with my colleagues who have who will be teaching the same course. We're all stuck because our students supposed to write 2,000-word term paper at the end of the course. And as you know, like Turnitin doesn't detect if the work done by AI or not. And in my summer class, out of 17 students, I'm 100% sure that one of the papers was written by AI, and the same my graders think and peer editors think, but I wasn't able to submit a report to disability resources. So students use, it sounds like students use some paid bot to get the paper, and formally it is still C paper. It's not good paper, but it is kind of C paper. And we all, honestly, who teaches in our department writing intensive course, were shocked by silence of Writing Center, because they should help us somehow, or university should change some requirements or other things, because changing assessment, you still need, students still should provide 2,000-word paper, which should be their own work. So what is your recommendation?
Right. So I'm getting some feedback. But the answer to your first question is Valerie Ballister was very involved with our committee when we started. She has since retired, and we're in the process of trying to work with Nancy Vasquez to get some information from her. I do understand that it is an issue, and that, again, I don't have a good technological solution for you. But if you and all of your peer editors and your faculty colleagues can obviously see that something was probably not written by a particular student, that's something that you should probably take forward to the Honor Council and let it be adjudicated. I don't think there's any problem with that. Just like you would if a student turned in a paper, a year ago, it was obviously not in their specific voice and it looked dramatically different from anything they'd written before, you would probably take that to the Honor Council.
Yeah, I agree with you, but the problem is the things I heard already for people who are working in Honor Council, they're saying that if you submit something AI related, they don't consider that at all. Okay, they put it in the site, like they accept this concern, not doing nothing because they don't know, they don't do any investigation in this manner, if you have such an issue. And as soon as students just acknowledge that they did. So I met a student, and students saying, no, it was my own work. That's it. So what is the next step?
Well, I do believe that the Honor Council will adjudicate the case. It may take a little longer than you might want it to, but I would still put it forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you all for this. We do need to move forward, so thank you to the three of you for fielding all these questions. Okay, our next piece of information, now we're going to move on to the approval of the meeting minutes. Note that the meeting minutes for our special meeting will be approved at our next meeting. Given the sensitive nature of the last meeting, we want it to be as accurate as possible. Are there any corrections to the June 12th meeting minutes found in attachment B? Hearing none, then I declare the minutes approved as distributed. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or concerns with our August 14th consent agenda items? Specifically, are there any requests to pull any items from the consent agenda? Note that items pulled from the agenda are automatically pulled if requested by a senator. No discussion is had on the pulled clauses now, but rather when we get to old business. Tiana.
Yes, I have a quite large list of things to be pulled on behalf of the School of Performance, Visualization, and Fine Arts, one of those new Path Forward initiative schools. We just need to have further discussions with our faculty. So I've sent to Speaker Hammond and to Secretary Klein a Word doc that actually itemizes all of these. I can also start pasting them in the chat, unless I don't have the ability to share a file through Zoom right now. but they're large enough that the list is extensive.
If you put the list in the chat, that would be helpful because then we can see the item, everybody can see the items, just the list of the course numbers.
Yeah.
I'll work on that. They're being pulled.
Mary.
I'd just like to request that Health 334, Women's Health, be pulled from the consent agenda for Women's and Gender Studies to consult with the department.
Rosanna? You're muted.
I had, on behalf of the leadership of the College of Agriculture and Life Science and the Department of Recreation, Park and Tourism Science, to withdraw the proposal for the grant of the BS HREM program. And I would like a motion.
Okay. If you can also put the number in the chat as well, just so we can make sure we have them all there. Any other changes to the consent agenda? Okay. Hearing none.
Clarification from which exact program is being withdrawn in the chat?
Yes. Yes, BS in Hotel and Resources Management. Okay, I will. Okay.
I believe that's BS-HREM. For
Yes.
those who are looking at the consent agenda.
Any more consent agenda?
Withdraw.
Oh,
yes.
Come on, Rosanna, can you mute yourself? Thank you.
Just want to verify if that's correct. I was trying to capture those in the chat. Is that correct? They're withdrawing the BS-HREM?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes. Yes.
So remember, all those come off the consent agenda without debate, and then they would come up later in the agenda new business, and then you would actually move to either table, which means it has to be brought back off the table at a future meeting, or you can move to have it returned to the department for consideration and discussion, which place it would go through the approval process. Usually an expedited version of that, but that's another way to have that happen. Just FYI, people. Hope that helps.
That's what I mentioned. We're going to talk about that in old business. And you might want to repeat that one more time when we get there. So any more changes? Hearing none, I declare the consent agenda approved as submitted. We now move on to committee reports. The Faculty Senate committees have submitted their reports, which can be found in attachments C1 through C4. That includes the Budget Information Committee report, Personnel and Welfare Committee report, Planning Committee report, and Research Committee report. Are there any questions or concerns for the core curriculum found in attachment C5? Hearing no questions or concerns, I declare the report approved as submitted. Okay, now we're on to old business. Okay, there were a number of courses pulled from the consent agenda. Oh, and I pulled them all here before, so I gotta scroll down. Can those people who pulled the courses please raise your virtual hand to start the discussion? Mary?
I would just ask that Health 334, Women's Health, be returned to the department for discussion. I believe discussions have already started with Women and Gender Studies to cross-list the course. So I think they're already in progress.
Okay, Angie, do we move on that one first?
So we would make a motion, a second, and then we would vote to have that happen.
So I move that HLTH 334 be returned to the department for discussion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Andrew, can you release a poll for a vote? So
Wait a
yes,
minute.
it's-
Wait.
Oh, yes, was there more discussion?
Well, yes, that course is currently cross-listed with gender studies, so how I just, for clarification and going back to the department, is it no longer being cross-listed? Is that what the problem is, Mary?
Yeah, what I was told is that the cross-listing ended 5 years ago, and so this is just a request to renew the cross-listed number. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And a yes vote would say, send it back for discussion.
Right now, we have fairly low participation. There's 94 people on the call, unless there's a lot that aren't senators. We don't have a lot of senators who are voting.
Oh, some people close the polls once.
Okay, why don't I end it and restart it just a second? I apologize to those people. Okay, the poll has been relaunched. Oh, God. I'll give it another 30 seconds or so. It seems to be pretty stable now. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So it is 69 in favor, 2 against.
Okay, so that passes. Tiana, do you want to go next?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to table all of those courses and programs and course changes that I put into the chat and that I've sent to Speaker Hammond and to Secretary Klein. For quick context, PVFA was created as a result of the Path Forward, consolidating faculty from several colleges, and the school is given a mandate for growth, particularly through the creation of new programs. And given the recent administrative changes, we want to pull back briefly to make space for additional discussions with our faculty about the intentions behind these specific new programs, as well as issues around the speed and scope of any program development. I need a seconder.
Is it, so you have an official?
I make a motion to table all of these items. The intention is to bring them off the table at the next meeting.
Second.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this part?
Are all these individual courses then able to be taught if they're needed this semester?
I think that's part of what the discussions are. We had aggressive hiring to try to get the music program specifically up and running. But I think that's part of the discussion.
Okay, if no more discussion, Andrew, can you put a poll up for?
Poll has been launched.
Can you please restate what a yes vote means versus what a no vote means?
A yes vote will table those things and send them back to the department so that there can be further discussion given recent events.
It appears everyone has voted who wishes to vote, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So the result are 71 yeses, 3 nos.
Okay, so that passes. Was there, Rosanna, did you want to comment on yours?
Yes, the main what it comments is that they're asking for withdrawal because there are some changes in the university, and they think that they need to wait to see what resources and future priorities. They want to wait for a better clarity regarding resources and future priorities because of the change in the university. That's what the leadership.
So are you moving for that to be sent back?
To be withdrawn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
I just want to point out for all of these are for the 24-25 catalog. So in response to Senator McGill's question that this was not going to be classes that are not going to be taught next week. These are classes that would not be taught till a year from now anyway.
Okay. So if no more discussion, Andrew, can you please launch the poll? Again, a yes vote would pull this and send it back from the and send it back to the department to give them more time.
In college.
In college.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it appears that it's stabilized, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. It is 67 votes in favor, 1 against.
Okay, so that we'll go back. Next item of business, during our June meeting, we discussed keeping meetings only via Zoom or having them be hybrid, allowing people who can be in person to be in person if they want to. Today, we're going to take a vote on that, but first, is there discussion on this? Raimundo?
Yes, my only comment is if we decide to have a hybrid way of meeting, I guess that having Andrew or someone like Andrew keeping track of the people that want to participate online and making sure that their voices are heard is
Yes,
going to be
absolutely.
important.
Yes.
I want to see my friends and colleagues at the Senate, in person from time to time, but I also appreciate the flexibility that we have for those of us who travel quite a bit to join for wherever we can join,
Yes.
including on the other side of the Atlantic sometimes. So I think it's going to be important that we keep people engaged as much as possible, understanding that some people, they're far away, they cannot just travel and come here for the Senate meetings, and yet they felt well included when we moved to an all Zoom meetings, right? So we have to be mindful of their concerns and try to engage them as much as possible.
I wholeheartedly agree, and we will pay a lot of attention if we end up moving to the hybrid, specifically on that. And there is no version that is even under consideration to remove the Zoom option. It's just whether or not people also have the option to be in person. Dana.
I just had a question about attendance. I think everybody really wants to attend these, and I was wondering what, for the folks that want to attend in person, do we actually have more, what's the sense of the level of engagement and participation of folks with a hybrid option versus total Zoom option? Is there any information on that?
Does anybody want to address that particular question? Angie?
I mean, so for some of us who've been in the Senate for a very long time and experienced beforehand, keep in mind that all of the discussion has to happen at a microphone. People have to be recognized. There's not like side conversations. We force everybody to go up to the microphone, that they're on the camera, that we recognize people who are at the remote locations. And usually, like in committee of the whole, we'd go for them first to make sure that all their concerns and everything are heard immediately first. So there's not a disadvantage in that sense of, someone at another location, because we've done that for many years and it's not been a problem. I think there's concern about side conversations, but again, that's not part of the business of the Senate. It's not part of any of the official stuff. And it's really nothing more than, I guess, some perceived social time that people might have. But, people at the remote locations can also gather as a group. But I am curious. I think it's very interesting thought, because we had hybrid before. I think one of the benefits of this is that people who are traveling are able to attend now, which they could not do before. They were just excused from the meeting, and only people at the locations could officially attend. So it's a very different, in that sense, it is a different model. So it'll be very interesting to see how many people actually show up in person when it's raining, and it's a lot easier than walking across campus to just there. They may show up just in case there's cookies, and maybe Speaker Hammond can send cookies to people. But I don't think this is a bad thing in the sense of making sure we're still have to follow the processes and the rules. But yeah, I suspect that it's kind of like our students when we had hybrid classes, that when it's rainy or stormy outside, that most everybody's going to be online anyway.
Catherine?
Thank you, Speaker Hammond. I just wanted to remind everybody, I know that we covered this in depth in our last meeting, but I simply wanted to remind everybody of the concerns of the folks that are at remote campuses. I have only been in faculty senate since it has been entirely remote. I've been a senator for a long time, in my book, 3 years. And I have really appreciated how open it feels. This to me is, I realized I was not here before. I've heard that it has not felt this way in the past, and I'm very, very worried about the way that we will have access to administrators and when they come to speak, and we can't go back to their offices with them. We can't go to coffee. There's a lot of informal stuff that happens that is precisely what people want, that is taken away from remote campuses. So I just wanted to remind folks of those concerns. There's concern about equity of access to the speakers. There's concern about equity of recognition. And there's concern simply that we won't have the kind of collegiality that you are all asking for will be exclusive of us. So I think there's a lot of very valid concerns with those who would rather see it remote. And I simply wanted to voice those concerns, not necessarily because they are my own, but in remembrance of what we spoke about in our last session. So we were all on the same page. Thank you.
Adam?
I agree with Senator Falvo, but I also want to remind the Senate that when we considered whether we would go forward with allowing hybrid sessions in the classroom, how the entire faculty senate felt about that it was not equitable for those who were in front of the classroom and those who were joining via Zoom. It would put us at a substantial disadvantage, I feel, because there are qualitative differences between being in the room and on Zoom. I would also like to point out that there's nothing that precludes those of you at College Station from still getting together and having those socials. I fully encourage those. But any official business, I strongly feel, should be conducted via Zoom, where all the branch locations can be included equally.
Mark?
Yeah, join Senator Haney and Senator Falvo as also coming from a remote location. I'm at the School of Law in Fort Worth. I don't think there's going to be any intention for people who are largely remote to be second-class citizens. No one's trying to do that, but I think there's inevitably some effect of that. And the equity which we've had in participation and in our abilities to work with administrators, honestly, having the side chat is a feature that I like as well. I would very much favor staying on Zoom, and I understand that's not everybody's position, but it's mine as a largely remote attending senator. And I say that I like in-person gatherings as much as the next person, but I don't think it's going to work as well for us here. Maybe it'll happen. I'll be proven wrong, but I intend to vote against it.
Jorge?
I just have a couple of technical questions. So, so the plan is to go hybrid or not every month. Is it possible maybe to go hybrid every other month and just go on Zoom the other month, right? So instead of doing 12 meetings, having 12 hybrid meetings, maybe having six and six. That might be a better model. Just a suggestion, right? So maybe we can go back and forth. That way we can kind of please everybody. The second point is, what about voting and things like that? Right now we do it through Zoom. So what if we go to Rudder 601? What are we going to do? Are we going to have paper ballots or something like that? Or do we have to bring an iPhone? And how are we going to handle that, right?
I would expect we would use some sort of online way to collect.
Even if we're physically pressing Rudder 601, right? So
go ahead, Angie.
I just want to address what we did. So this is a different thing that I think some of the senators aren't aware of. Historically, even when people were online, we always had a show of hands for voting. This is a very different thing. We've always had public voting. That was actually a very core and essential part of what we did as the Senate, that it was by show of hands, and the people who online did a show of hands as well. So that we went to a personalized, I'm going to lose my words here, like a secret ballot in Zoom, but that's not actually how the Senate ever operated through all the years. That only started because of the functionality in Zoom. And I think that is something we should talk about, because I don't think there was ever intention for the Senate business to be done anonymously. So that's kind of a separate discussion in a sense.
And I want to read Carolyn's comment. If we choose to go hybrid, could we try the experiment and then take a poll to get an idea of how well it is working to ensure equity? So that is an option too. And we could even just move only for next meeting to be hybrid to see how that felt. Deb?
So, I'm quite sympathetic to the cause of the satellite campuses, and I think there is definitely a point there in terms of the equity part. But one comment when this was being discussed in the last faculty senate meeting that caught my eye, I don't remember which senator put it in there, is that we haven't had a board of regents, typically chair would usually come and address the faculty senate. And that has not happened in a long time. And I could be wrong. My recollection was that, there was some reticence on the part of Board of Regents to meet over Zoom. And so if that sort of trend continues, are we then getting cut off from meeting with the Board of Regents if we keep doing things over Zoom and they refuse to come meet with us? So we are kind of painting us into a corner by doing, only on Zoom, because, one of our leadership components is not going to come meet with us then. So I think, just to accommodate the Board of Regents, we probably need to go back to doing it in a hybrid format.
Farzan?
Yes, thank you. I'm all about saving time for faculty. I think this makes us, at least me, more efficient. We have a big campus, it's a large campus, and travel time and all those things, the seasonality of and issues with travel. So I highly encourage fellow senators to vote for Zoom only. However, we're not incurring any cost. I remember we had refreshments when we were in person. Maybe we could use some of that to hold socials, and this way bind, the faculty senate in some way. Thank you.
Just to remind everybody, at the end of next meeting in September, we do have a social afterwards sponsored by the Vice President of Faculty Affairs Office, I believe, up in the University Club. Raimundo?
Yeah, sorry. One of the things that I wanted to say is that I think, one of the I have been a senator for quite a while, right? And I still remember how painful and difficult it was to count votes when we were doing it old school, with most people in person. So there are some regardless of how we vote, right? But if we vote hybrid, there are some aspects of the Zoom meeting that were extremely practical. And one of them is vote getting, although I agree with Rajesh and others that, and with Angie particularly, that votes ideally should be public, and we all senators should know how everybody votes. That's perfectly fine. And that goes in the spirit of transparency, but making the logistics of voting for decision-making purposes as practical as it has been in these past few years where we have been remote should be considered in any technology solution that we contemplate in the future.
Catherine?
Thank you, Speaker Hammond. And thank you all for your patience. I realize I've spoken on this before. I will admit a small amount of frustration. One of the things that is hard in this conversation is that those of us from remote campuses are often told how accessible it is for us by those that aren't needing to utilize those methods of accessibility. And that can be a little bit frustrating, as well as, when we talk about this and we talk about anytime we say this isn't accessible, the counterpoint is it has this benefit. But what I hear is precisely that benefit is inaccessible in person to those in remote campuses. So for me, it's kind of like it's a circular thing, right? You say, well, we need to have it in person because these are the pros of that. But every pro is taken away from those that are not in person. So this makes it difficult for me to understand this as a two-sided thing, because I don't understand what benefit we get that does not actually harm those that are not on campus. So for me, when we talk about this as, well, accessibility is here, but we might be able to talk to one another, and cookies, I like cookies as much as the next person. Trust me, my entire caucus knows this. I don't see how those are two measurable things because one detracts from the other. So I realize that this is a common frustration, but I think perhaps that may explain why, for those of us on remote campuses, talking about pros and cons can be frustrating because the pros are cons for us.
And just a reminder, we do have to make some decision today, because last year when we voted to do it remote last year, it was only until August. So we have to do something. It was expected that we would move into in-person based on that vote from before. So we need to make sure we make a decision. Adam?
Yeah, so the way I'm seeing it here is going into the in-person option is definitely a pro for those of us on main campus. And that's a pro that is not available for those in the satellite campuses. That's true. I acknowledge that. But that's not a pro any of us have now. So going to the in-person hybrid, we're going to be giving a benefit that nobody currently has to those of us who are on College Station campuses. I'm struggling to see how that makes anyone worse off. I mean, it certainly makes those of us on College Station campus better off, yes. I don't see how it makes anyone on the satellite campuses worse off. Maybe somebody could clarify that for me. Again, yeah, we're getting a benefit that you're not going to get, yes, acknowledged, but I don't see how that makes you worse off than you are right now.
Adam?
If I could speak to that, Adam, you've identified it exactly right, but the missing piece is equity, and it's not equitable to those of us who are on satellite campuses. to not have official business be conducted in the same way for everyone across the board. As I've said before, that doesn't preclude those of you at College Station actually meeting and having those socials. I fully encourage that. But all official business should be done through Zoom, and we all know how hybrid has been treated in the past. I've received personal assurances from different faculty members saying, oh no, hybrid is not going to be treated that way, but it's just not equitable. It's not fair to those of us on the satellite campuses. So if that helps to alleviate it, or someone who's more articulate could pick that up.
I mean, it's sort of like saying someone else can't have a benefit because you can't have it.
Not at all. Well, no, not at all. But the benefit is not exclusive. It's not a zero-sum game where there's a benefit but no downside. There is a downside because it treats faculty, senators differently when it comes to official business.
I don't see that, but okay.
Jim?
I think someone might have mentioned this a little while ago, but I think we can put a limit, maybe just this semester, or maybe these 2 semesters, and then relook.
Or even just next time.
Well, I think we need more than one time to really get a broader view, but maybe 1 semester, and then we look at it again in, after that. But I think it's worth the input after we've seen what happens to try a hybrid.
I mean, those remote are still going to be able to address the Senate just as well as those of us who are on campus. The only difference is that you'll be on a screen instead of in front of a microphone. I honestly don't see how that hurts you.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to call a question on this, and let's move on.
Okay, what do we do when we call the question? Tiana?
This would be a motion on the floor, and we don't really have one yet defined.
Yeah, because there are now a couple different versions of the question.
Oh, okay. But so then we just need to someone has to make a motion to vote on this. I'd happy to do that if that's what we need to do.
Vote on what?
Because I heard a 6 and 6 every other. I heard a 1 semester. I heard,
There are like 4 options that we have been discussing, right? 6 and 6, the next one, 6 months, and let's see what happens, or remote only. So we can break the problem into remote only versus not remote only. And then if we decide to go hybrid, we can then vote on A/B choices if we're going to do binary voting moving forward. And when I say hybrid, that would mean, actually, I want to make a motion. I move that, and by the way, I'm terrible with this parliamentary stuff, even though I've been in the Senate for so long. I just complain and ask questions, but I never pay attention to how things are done. However, I mean, if I'm wrong, I request that a senator with a lot more knowledge jumps in. But I would move to vote with 2 options: yes for hybrid at some point in the future, to be determined in some way, and no to remote exclusively. We're not going to do any change in the future, at least until the next Senate period. So I will make this motion to vote, and then we can then decide if we vote for hybrid, how to do it.
Larry?
I was going to make a motion that we vote to just keep doing Zoom for the next 6 months so we could get past this and go on to something else. This is dragging out way too long. So I don't know what I do now. I guess we have to see if there's a second for the motion that's on the floor first.
I'll second Larry's motion.
Wait. The motion that's actually on the floor is.
Yeah, and I'll second
It's a motion on the floor.
that
The other motion doesn't have a second.
I don't know what Raimundo's motion was, though. It wasn't very clearly articulated.
So the vote, my motion was, sorry, thank you, Adam. My motion was to vote for hybrid or not hybrid at some point in the future, whichever way we define it, or going back to, or just keeping remote only.
So if we're currently on remote only, then I think the way you could word it is you move to go to hybrid.
Well, he proposed options, so that's really not a motion. So I
Right.
made a motion that we just keep doing what we're
No,
doing.
I proposed two options, hybrid or not hybrid. So I moved to going hybrid.
Second.
Point of order, Senator Fickle's motion was the first one on the floor with a second.
Tiana?
I don't know what to say to that. Can somebody else give me some advice on this? Because Raimundo did put a motion on the floor. We called for seconders and
No, we didn't call for seconders. That's the problem. Like another motion was interjected before, we even called for seconding my motion.
His motion was not a motion. He proposed a couple of alternatives. He didn't make a motion that we could second and vote on.
Tiana recognized that I had made a motion.
Okay, all right, so what I'm hearing is Larry's was to have only remote for the next 6 months. Is that what you said?
Yeah, keep doing what we're doing. It's working.
And just to contrast it, Raimundo's motion. It was that we somehow have hybrid in at least some of the meetings going forward.
But that's vague, isn't it?
Yes.
What do we mean in the later, sometime later?
Because I
Can you
think
be specific?
which that could be a good yes, no. Let me just say this because it's what I'm hearing is absolutely never a in-person meeting in the next 6 months versus at least one meeting hybrid. Is that Adam?
So let me provide a suggestion. If the status quo is we continue with online only. So it doesn't seem to me to make sense to have a motion to continue the status quo. It seems to me to make a lot more sense to have a motion, we switch to hybrid. And if that motion gets voted down, then by default, we simply continue on with the.
as I understand what Tracy said, we had made a motion that we would be online only for this session and that it comes to an end today. So that we need to actually make some kind of decision going forward. Is that correct, Tracy?
Yes.
So to keep the status quo is also to make a motion. Because we can't just continue going on fully Zoom.
I see. So if we don't make any decision, we have no idea of what we're going to be doing. Okay, I understand.
And that the status quo would mean that only people at remote campuses could be on Zoom. Everybody at College Station would have to be in person to be here.
No, my motion is to make it a hybrid for everyone.
Right. That's how I understood it too. Tammy.
I guess I'm getting caught in the fray that whoever you recognize first that made the motion, it was not second because it wasn't a proper motion. So whatever Senator Raimondo said was already absolute because it was not an absolute motion. So then you recognize Larry. He made a motion that was seconded. So all motion we at this time can speak on is a motion that by a recognized person that was first and seconded. So I really should only be talking about calling for the vote for Senator Larry's vote. And if it fails, a new motion needs to be made in order to move forward.
Andrew, you want to mention?
My only suggestion is Larry kind of had an ill-defined time period, 6 months, which doesn't necessarily correspond to a certain number of Senate meetings. So I think that one might be something we might want to discuss if it's, or a friendly amendment added.
Fix it.
We meet monthly, so how is 6 months not defined?
If you're happy with half a because we're gonna, I would just say we should either do it for the whole session or not, because we're gonna have the same discussion 6 months if we do it like this again.
Okay, can I amend my motion?
Yes.
Okay, I make a motion that we continue with Zoom meetings for the next Senate year, I guess you'd say, for the next term of the Senate.
I'll second that.
Second.
Jorge, did
Point
you
of
want
order, so we're voting to amend the motion first, correct? This is an amended motion. It needs a majority.
So at the beginning of the whole,
we have to vote for the motion amendment? I know. All right. Jorge,
if I may, at the beginning of the whole discussion, we were talking about what? Going to hybrid, right? So that was the original motion, right?
They're saying that there wasn't actually an original motion, that the only actual motion that was made was to go back onto Zoom. And again, if we don't do something today, the default is that we go back to in-person only, with only remote campuses able to attend by Zoom, and that if you're traveling, you can't attend at all. So we got to do something. So
can we?
So there's a motion that is a friendly amendment to be able to have Zoom, just have the Zoom for the rest of the year, for this whole session coming up starting September 1st through next August. So we need to vote on that one first. And then we'll vote on the actual motion to Zoom for another year.
Okay. Jorge, did you want to say something in regarding?
Well, I think I like the idea of running some kind of experiment. Maybe we can do it for just this semester. Do the hybrid thing just this semester, see what happens. Because right now, what people are saying, let's keep it the way it is. Right?
Okay, can we all just vote right now? I mean, we're gonna lose quorum and then we go back to in-person only, and that's like as Angie said.
All right, so what is the motion right now?
So actually, to make that even simpler, Raimundo, would you be willing to withdraw this kind of still?
I withdraw my first motion, even though someone spoke before me. Whatever, that's fine. Let's just vote on this thing. We have to vote on an amendment to the first motion and then on the motion as amended, and that's it.
Someone needs to type it up. So.
The motion right now is that they're going to amend the motion to be mentioning to the whole year.
The academic year of the remaining Senate term.
Adam?
And then if that motion, I just want to clarify, if that motion fails, then Ray can introduce a motion to go hybrid.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can, so if you don't want to go, if you don't want to keep everything remote, you can vote no. So you vote no on this motion, and then Ray will introduce his and you'll vote yes on his.
And someone could also do a motion that at least says nobody is required, everybody's allowed to do Zoom if they want to. That could be another motion as well. That would probably have very few people against it.
Oh, so that would effectively make it everything hybrid.
Yes, potentially.
That would do effectively what Raimundo wants to do. Okay.
Okay, so right now we're changing the motion to represent the full year to be on Zoom. Andrew, can you put a poll out?
Yeah, I'm going to put it in the chat just to say on Zoom. Okay, is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
So we're all voting on the same thing.
But this is not to, this is just to accept the change of the thing, not to vote. We're not voting on whether or not we're on Zoom or not. This is just to change it.
Okay. Can I launch the, I think I just launched the poll.
Yep, you did.
Okay.
Senator Falvo, you can just type, yeah, your vote to Andrew.
Okay. I have it stabilized. I have not, I will add the extra vote when I hear what it is, but I'm going to end the poll now and share the results. So the results are 48 in favor of this, 18 against, for a total of 66 votes.
Okay, so I believe that passes. Next, what we're going to do is vote on the new, the amended motion, which is to have all the next year on Zoom.
I don't think we've called it yet, though. Call the question.
Well, if there's no
I mean,
more,
if there's no more debate, we can vote. Nobody has to call the question.
yeah, doesn't have to be called.
You don't have to call a question.
Yeah. All right, so Andrew, can you please run a poll for yes would be the next 9 to 12 meetings will be on Zoom only.
Relaunch the poll.
The yes is Zoom only, right?
Yes is Zoom only.
Okay, I'll give another minute or so, even though it's stabilized. No, everybody's wanting to have their vote. And Adam, was Senator Falvo's vote for this? Okay, I have not seen any changes, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So there is 39 in favor and 28 against.
Does that, I'm unclear if that's enough number for this to pass. Does it have to be just greater than 50%, or does it have to be?
I'm not, I believe it's a majority pass, correct?
It's a majority pass for a main motion.
Mm-hmm.
And given that this topic was introduced last month, I think we can treat it as a non-emergency item since we already had prior discussion, in which case it's a simple majority.
Okay, so therefore I say it passed, at least next meeting. It can be brought up again if people want to, but right now the next 9 to 12 meetings are going to be online only. Okay, let's move on. We now move on to new business. In the wake of recent events, it's nice to celebrate some good news, specifically 3 members of our university community who have gone above and beyond. So that first item of new business will be award presentations. Shared Governance Award, in recognition of the work at Texas A&M administrators who positively impact faculty through their commitment to shared governance. The Faculty Senate Executive Committee established the Faculty Senate Shared Governance Award in fall of 2019. It is not given every year. The award is only given when someone truly goes above and beyond. The aim of this award is to recognize the strong commitment of administrators to the concept of shared governance across our institution. This year's winner is Dr. Debbie Thomas, Executive Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs of Texas A&M University at Galveston and Associate Provost of Texas A&M University. I will read a few words from her nominator. Dr. Deborah Thomas joined Galveston a year ago as our Chief Academic Officer and has been outstanding in gaining the trust and respect of our faculty. This is an impressive feat given the suspicion which pervades the relationship between the two campuses. Dr. Thomas has proven her dedication to shared governance, navigating our campus through the MGT evaluation process. Through numerous contentious meetings with each department and unit here, she was always responsive to our concerns, returning emails with informed responses, coming to events, and engaging with faculty on multiple levels. Her advocacy on our behalf displays an uncommon commitment to shared governance through the recommendations which were accepted and rejected, which closely mirrored the desires of our faculty and staff. Debbie has always been honest and straightforward with us, and this displays a genuine respect and desire to work together to achieve goals, exemplifying the principle of shared governance. Those who know her from geosciences can also attest to her commitment. I fully support her receiving this award and have the full endorsement of the entire Galveston delegation. Additionally, the Faculty Senate Executive Committee has agreed upon a resolution to show our support for Dr. Thomas. The Senate resolution on receipt of the Faculty Senate shared governance reads as follows. Recognizing the monumental challenges posed to Texas A&M University at Galveston by the MGT evaluation and noting the immense potential for substantial disruption to the operations of Texas A&M University at Galveston, and understanding the legitimate fears and angst of the faculty of Texas A&M University at Galveston, and listening to those concerns in a one-on-one basis and actively seeking to work with Galveston Senate delegation. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Faculty Senate of Texas A&M University hereby bestows upon Chief Academic Officer and Executive Associate Vice President, Dr. Deborah Thomas, the Faculty Shared Governance Award for actively collecting, advocating, and implementing faculty feedback to the MGT report and recommendations, keeping faculty engaged and informed about impacts and possible outcomes of administrative decisions, earning and maintaining the respect of the faculty of Texas A&M University at Galveston through challenging times, respecting faculty recommendations and input, truly exemplifying the principles of shared governance through these actions. Ratified by the Executive Committee of the Faculty Senate on July 24th, 2023. A copy of the award and the resolution, which will be framed and given to Dr. Thomas, can be found in attachment D2. Next. Congratulations, Debbie.
So Tracy, just before you go on, we are rapidly approaching the 6 o'clock hour.
We are. Does anybody want to do a motion that says we can go past the 6 o'clock hour so we are able to read our awards? Angie.
I move we extend the meeting past the 6 o'clock deadline.
Second.
Andrew, can you please display a poll? So yes would be extend past the 6 p.m. meeting time.
The poll has stabilized. I'm going to end it and share the results. So the results are 43 in favor of continuing, 10 not in favor.
So that passes, so we can continue. I don't have to speak as quickly. All right, so our next award, again, congratulations, Debbie. Really great, really great. Okay, our next award is the Walter Dougherty Award. It's awarded annually to a member of the Faculty Senate who has displayed an uncommon devotion to the mission of the Senate. The winner is Dale Rice, the previous Speaker of the Faculty Senate. I will read a few words from a few of his nominators. His role led us not only through the pandemic years, but the incredible changes our current administration has brought upon the university. Dale's experience as a journalist has equipped him with the ability to ask thought-provoking questions that cut to the heart of the matter. This skill has proven invaluable in his role as a Speaker of the Faculty Senate, as he consistently seeks to uncover the truth and promote transparency. During his tenure as Speaker, Dale navigated 2 difficult years of change with remarkable grace and composure. Even in the face of adversity, he remained steadfast in upholding the decorum of the Senate. While some resorted to aggression or made insensitive remarks, Dale's unwavering commitment to respect and integrity shone through. He set an example for others to follow. Dale's leadership style reflects the core values that define our university: loyal, integrity, respect, and service. He leads by examples, inspiring his colleagues to uphold these values in their work. His dedication to the mission of the Senate is unparalleled as he consistently strives for excellence in all of his endeavors. In summary, Dale's uncommon devotion to the mission of the Senate makes him a very deserving recipient of this award. Congratulations, Dale. A copy of the certificate, which will be framed and presented to Dr. Rice, can be found in attachment D3. Next, the Richard Stadelman Award, awarded annually to a first-term member of the Faculty Senate who has displayed an uncommon devotion to the mission of the Senate. This year's winner is Krista Oldham, who is a university library archivist and first-term senator. I will read a few words from her nominator. Krista Oldham was elected as a university library's representative to Faculty Senate during a time when the future membership of former library faculty was uncertain. Knowing that future membership and participation in the Senate was of the utmost importance, she chose to serve on the Bylaws Committee and actively participated to codify librarian membership in the Senate by working closely with members of the Bylaws Committee and former Speaker Rice to alter the language of the Constitution, which was successfully passed. Congratulations, Krista. A copy of the certificate, which will be framed and presented to Senator Oldham, can be found in attachment D4. Our next issue of new business is the proposed bylaws revisions to the Elections Committee, which can be found in attachment D1. Is there any discussion?
To accept.
Do we need to have a motion for that, or can we just launch? Dana?
Sorry, I wasn't recognized. I was moving to accept if there's not additional conversation.
Oh, good. Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Secretary Klein, can you please launch a poll?
Poll has been launched. I'll give it another minute, and then we'll be done. Okay, there has not been any changes, so I'm going to end the poll. And I'll share the results. 45 in favor, 0 against.
Great, so that passes. Those revisions have been adopted. I would also like, before we go to the committee of the whole, I just wanted to mention a couple of things that I wanted to put on people's minds that we might want to put on next month's agenda. First is that the Board of Regents has a student member on their executive board. I think it would be interesting if we were to propose to the regents that they might also select a faculty member representative to serve on the board, and just curious about what others' perspectives on this. Now, that would just be us proposing it. It doesn't mean that they would accept our proposal. Also, it might be interesting for us to think about next month about having a vote on the Chicago principles as a basis for us moving forward. We can post them on the Faculty Senate website for people to be able to look at them in advance. And then last one, it might be interesting to think about if you all wanted a place for faculty members to provide feedback, your own feedback on the MGT to the Faculty Senate anonymously. That's just something to think about. Okay, finally, Committee of the Whole. With no other new business on the agenda, I now invite Speaker-elect Price to take us into the Committee of the Whole.
Hello, everyone. So just as a reminder, Committee of the Whole is an opportunity for you to bring issues forward. It doesn't mean that there's not it's because it's not an official part of the business of the Senate. it's to bring issues to be discussed at either the EC or assigned to committees or things like that. It's not something that's supposed to be debated or solved right now. So just as a reminder. So saying that, does anyone have any items for committee of the whole?
Jorge?
Yes, about the time of the meetings. I remember back in 2010, 2011, we used to adjourn by 5 o'clock. Now we adjourn by 6. How come? Because of Zoom? Zoom is abusing us now. we
Probably.
can afford to be late more hours.
I just answered that in the chat for you where you had put the question. It's in our bylaws. It's in the bylaws.
But I remember we used to adjourn by 5 or so. I don't
There's
remember.
been a lot going on.
Old days.
There's been a lot going on, and
I would just say, just again, and not the whole debating in the committee of the whole, but just FYI, when we had guest speakers, the meetings did run longer. So
Well, the problem is this: right now we have 61 participants, right? And so we lose quorum, right? I mean, as people just.
We'll bring that up to we can bring that up to the EC. I've made a note. Thanks.
We need to be a bit, more mindful about people's times, and because otherwise they're going to just, get out of the meeting. It's not like the same thing when you go in a room where you see them walking out, right? With Zoom, it's so simple, right? So,
Senator McGill.
Yeah, and maybe Larry has the same thing. Honor Council was reorganized under a different thing. I think the disciplinary thing, and they're proposing some changes that many of us who serve on the Honor Council are very concerned about, because they would reduce the amount of student participation on many cases. And we feel that that's not the best thing to do. So you need to look into that. I think it had probably to do with MGT or something, who knows?
I'm not sure about that, but I don't think it had anything to do with MGT, but we'll refer that to the EC I'm sure it'll go to a committee. Thank you. Senator Fickle.
Yes, I'm just following up on what Clint had. I had sent Tracy email previously letting her know what was going on, just so the EC would be aware. We had a meeting last week with Dr. Bell, and I think he heard loud and clear that it wasn't going to go through the way it had been started, which was get it all done this summer and implement a bunch of changes before the fall semester started. I think where we generally left it was, well, we'll put together a committee and maybe look at something that might change in the spring if there's any changes necessary to be made. But part of the issue that we may or may not need to talk about in the future is, I think a lot of this is stemming from the fact that Honor Council used to be under the provost. And as a result of MGT and all the changes, Honor Council got moved to Student Services. And what they're trying to implement is Honor Council functioning more like student rules do, which is not necessarily the same due process that we have in Honor Council. So I don't think there's anything for us to do right now other than be aware. And there's over 50 of us on the Honor Council that are working on it. Dr. Royal will be in the lead on it. And I'm sure there's some of us that are on both Honor Council and Senate. So we'll keep everybody informed. But we told Dr. Bell that we did not believe that they could make any changes to Honor Council processes without bringing it to the Faculty Senate for approval. So right now, that's where we're at. Just wanted to make everybody aware of it, because there's some significant changes that really impact, I think, whether or not students are getting due process in the Honor Council process. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cahill.
I'm going to sound like a grumpy old man. I say this without intending to make any comment about our immediate vote about Zoom meetings. I would just ask all senators to please remember that they should be recognized before they speak. It was very hard to follow what the debate was on the previous motions. And it's a little unfair to Tracy and Andrew and Angie when they have to try to herd us like a a bunch of cats. So I know that people's emotions sometimes get high about questions. I just think things would run a whole lot more smoothly if you raised your hand and waited to be recognized. And my rant is over, and I'm going to go now retreat into my grumpy old man cave.
Thank you. Senator Sachs.
Yes, thank you. President Welsh said he was not aware of the allegations in the Inside Higher Ed newspaper story. Those allegations were supposed to have come from somebody who was directly in our president's or previous president's cabinet. To me, this is so bad that I can't see how we can just put it in the rearview mirror and just look at what the recommendations were and what we should do about the specific recommendations. The process is fundamentally flawed in ways that, or well, I don't need to enumerate the ways it's flawed if in fact the recommender was the people who commissioned the independent report. Somebody needs to investigate this, in my opinion, and I put it to the executive committee to figure out the best way forward. I was asked what my opinion was. I won't share that here, but I think it needs to go forward.
Thank you. Senator Taylor.
Yes, thank you. To Dr. McGill's point, just as an alert, Dr. Fickle's point, everyone, Dr. Bell did appear at the most recent Academic Affairs Committee meeting and outlined or went through many of those proposed changes. And everyone, as Dr. Fickle indicated, he did face some very vigorous feedback and alerting to, we don't see a lot of these processes working nearly as smoothly as you might intend, Dr. Bell. He was very courteous. His colleagues were very courteous. He did thank us. I sent the Academic Affairs Committee that same set of slides that he presented, but if any other senators would like to see the slides outlining the changes by his office in the Aggie Honor System, Drs. Haney and I are certainly happy to send. I will say I appreciated that it sounded like at least there was an intent to put more onus of personal responsibility on the student and to take away options on, if you don't like this process, well, you can have your backup plan. It's not mechanistically very good, but the way that they've got it, but at least I think there's a desire by his office to put the student into a position of, if you're going to choose this path forward, you're going to live with the consequence of it. And I appreciate that. On another note, Drs. Haney and I have been really and Dr. Haney in particular is a real champion of this. The study abroad office, apparently not too many semesters ago, was essentially, I guess it lost financial support by the university. And so we've seen some really, really interesting fees pop up for students and faculty who do study abroad. And if your students are presenting at meetings internationally, they are now getting charged a fee just to present. And if they don't pay it, I learned this the hard way, their concur travel request will be held up until it gets done. I don't understand, other than, hey, we got a lot of expenses and a lot of salaries to pay, so let's do that. But in the spirit of FYI, there you go. Go Dr. Haney for championing, trying to figure that all out. But Academic Affairs has tried to recruit that office to come and speak to us. They have yet to actually do it. So if anybody has friends in that office, please point them our way, because we really like to hear some justification on what is going on. My rant is now over.
Thank you. Senator Ramsey.
I just wanted to recognize and say thank you to Senator Janice Epstein. She is retiring, and she has been one of the greatest contributors to the Faculty Senate, and she was a Stadelman Award winner. She was the inaugural winner of the Walter Doherty Award, and I just want to say thank you to Janice for everything she's done.
I want to second that. A round of applause for Senator Epstein. You have been amazing and a mentor for me as well. So I hope you enjoy your retirement, and please feel free to watch the Senate meetings and pop popcorn and watch the fun. So thank you so much for all of your service to the university and to the Senate.
Well, it really has been a pleasure. It gave me a lot of fulfillment that I don't always find as a peon in the math department. I like how the Senate is so respectful of everybody and listening, that it really has changed my life, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Congratulations again. Senator Laporte.
Oh, I didn't think I was next. I thought that the other two guys would be ahead of me. I've got a few thoughts that are swirling around my head, but I'd like to know if basically my message is, are we still going to do an independent study of what went down? Because the MGT report has been kind of there has been criticism of it, and Texas taxpayers paid for that. And it was obviously maybe written, yeah. And then in the OGC report, none of Sharp's texts, specifically the one where it said, she's fired, don't worry. I want to know where that went in the fold. And I wonder if we're still doing an independent report, because I'm at the point where I'm not really trusting a lot of what's going on.
Yes, that's not stopped. That's still continuing. Yes. But we'll certainly, the AC will certainly take that up and respond.
Thank you.
Senator Miranda.
Thank you, Speaker-elect Price. I have been asked, and on behalf of Dr. Leonard Bright, I would like him to be recognized by the Senate to speak.
Yes, please.
I think I have to do that. I will recognize him to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you.
You should be joining the meetings shortly.
He can also just raise his hand when he gets here, and we can go to somebody else.
Also, is there anything?
He's here.
Thank you. Sorry.
I'm here. I'm trying to get set up here. All right. So, all right. So, I'm sorry. Here, let me do this. I have some written comments, so I just want to read them off. All right, thank you for allowing me to provide a statement for the record. I wrote an open letter detailing my treatment under Mark Welsh as dean. I appreciate the support that I have received, and I can provide all documents and videos that support my allegations. I have nothing to hide. I believe it is important that I speak to the culture of TAMU, especially the culture that I have experienced, especially given the recent controversies that has happened on campus. Let's not be too quick to put this genie back in the bottle. We have an opportunity to make real cultural change, but it will not happen if we are hesitant about pushing past the spin. TAMU wants you to believe their false narrative that my claims are about racism, to deflect attention from my actual claims about discrimination, a rigged promotion process, and retaliation by Mark Welsh. In fact, it was Dr. Frank Ashley who stated in a recorded meeting that a racist helped thwart his full promotion application at TAMU years ago. I never make this claim, but it is a typical tactic of the Welsh team. Mark Welsh has earned my distrust. When he learned of my actual claims of discrimination and a rigged promotion process, he retaliated and deserted his post. His poor decision-making were captured in an extensive UGC report, after which the provost agreed to remove his supervisory authority over me. It is my understanding that the original report is over 100 pages and gives a detailed account of various systematic issues present in the Bush School under his leadership. Wells can immediately release the original 2020 UGC report in video recorded sessions to show that he is truly willing to be transparent and accountable. He should lead by example. If he refuses, I question whether he will be any different at the university level. Wells' team appeared to be afraid of the 2020 UGC report getting out. The faculty should fully understand not only what Chancellor Sharp, the Board of Regents, Dr. Banks, and others did, but also what Mark Welsh did, given his appointment as interim president. I believe the same culture that exists at the university and system levels also existed in the Bush School, which enabled Mark Welsh to do what he did. We deserve full transparency. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Alvarado?
I'm going to talk about something else, but does anybody have a reaction to what the owner just said? I don't want to steal his thunder, so because I'm going to talk about something else.
Yeah, and no, I think the committee of the whole is an opportunity to share, and that's not a discussion because it's not official time of the Senate.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, and that's not to squelch anything. I'm just saying is that's normally not a thing. Just before you do anything else, though, I wanted to say if anybody else wants anything brought, any senators brought to the committee of the whole, if you don't get a chance or you don't raise your hand, please send that to Andrew before we end the committee of the whole, so that can be feedback or comments on what our speakers just said as well. If there's issues that you want to have raised as a senator through committee of the whole, please feel free to put that in the chat to Andrew, and then we'll get that documented as well. So sorry, go ahead, please, Senator.
So I'm still, I don't feel too happy or at ease about the whole academic freedom thing. And, we hear from the president and he's giving us some assurances and all of that. That's all he can say, though. But it might happen again. Maybe the lieutenant governor or someone else in government might call someone and start picking on faculty, right? So, we need to have a long-term plan to avoid issues like that from repeating. I'm talking about the Alonso's case, right? So one thing that we can do, which is a crazy idea, but it might work, is for every faculty member, I'm not forcing anybody, but willing to do this, the first Monday or Tuesday of every month to say something crazy in class, to see if that's going to trigger all these phone calls and all these complaints. To overwhelm the system, just to overwhelm the system. And then at that point, they get the point, let's not mess up with professors. What's the point? Professors say crazy things anyway, right? So, the whole thing is a bit silly, in my opinion. Lieutenant governor picking up the phone, talking to the chancellor because someone says something at a conference. For God's sake, come on, we can do better than that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kolosinski.
Sorry, didn't realize I was muted. Sorry. To Jorge's point, I agree with him completely. I was thinking that the one thing we could do, and maybe the executive committee can propose this, there should be some sort of a person that's trained in First Amendment law and in academic freedom who could just look over allegations against faculty or students. And if you stipulate to all the facts that are in the accusation or in the complaint, if you stipulate that all those facts are true, if the alleged behavior is in fact First Amendment protected or protected by academic freedom, it should be immediately dismissed without any investigations, without anything. To me, that's what should have happened in Professor Alonso's case. Like somebody should have said, this is crazy. This is First Amendment protected. It's going in the trash. And I don't know if we could ask the university for some sort of a First Amendment officer who could do that sort of thing. That would be helpful. I have another question for the executive committee. Is there, one of the Tracy said earlier in her speaker's comments, which were great, that when the administration wants to go against the faculty and say a dean appointment or a department head appointment or whatever, they should be forced to explain exactly why they're doing it. Now, the current dean and department head rules were just recently changed under ex-Dear Leader's reign to no longer disclose the results of the faculty survey to the faculty. And I remember NK defending that by simply saying he doesn't want to embarrass candidates who are appointed over and above the faculty's will, which seems to me that really tells me he's really devoted to shared governance there. But anyway, I was wondering if the EC is doing something to undo that change, because we really do need that transparency. and insistence when administrators make appointments over and above the faculty's will, that they be forced to explain that. Is there any movement on that ground? I'm just wondering.
Thank you. Senator Ariabe.
Well, I second Adam's idea, and I think that Rajesh is also, supportive of this. I think that I don't know if the ombudsperson could play that role, or there should be some other faculty advocate, or student advocate, or student and faculty and staff advocate for academic freedom. It is important to have such a position, because I agree. Actually, I disagree with a lot of things that Adam says. He disagrees with a lot of things that I say, but that's the whole point of being academics. I don't want to be existing in my own bubble and talking to people that just look like me and think like me, because that would be a very boring life. And we should protect the rights of everyone to express our beliefs respectfully to others. And, President West said, well, let's not look back, and let's not, I don't want to fire people. I want to, look forward, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But there should be meaningful actions that signal change. And I think that creating such a position in the university that protects everyone's academic freedom should be something that we can that we should look into for sure.
Point of order, we already have one. It's called the Faculty Ombudsman. I do believe it's Professor Buchanan. Someone help me out, Jim?
The faculty ombuds is not to be an advocate to faculty, but to make sure that the faculty are following, that the rules of the university are being
policy. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, that person was not looped in when Alonso's case happened, right? So it was a academic freedom issue that that person was not, even able to.
I'm just stating what the ombuds is supposed to do, not anything else. Senator Miranda.
I also, even though Adam and I see things very differently many times, I agree with him completely. This would be a very good thing to have a First Amendment look through any complaint. The request that I have for the Senate EC is if you can look to documenting the FOIA requests that are targeted at faculty, and creating a list of who is being targeted by FOIA requests. I am hearing some concerning things from faculty about, and I feel vulnerable about that. So I would love if the EC could look into this. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Kolosinski, you have your hands up again, sir.
Yes, I was going to point out the faculty ombudsman, as far as I know, does not have the authority to just outright dismiss complaints against behavior that's First Amendment protected. I don't think there is anyone in the hierarchy who has the authority to do that at the moment. That's something we should really look for.
The faculty ombuds just simply make sure that the rules are applied, whatever the rules are, that they are applied appropriately, or that the rules are being followed. That's
right. But that's not what I was. Yeah, I was calling for something else.
No, I'm not saying that. I was just saying what an ombuds does. And the reason I say that is because I used to be the ombuds for my college. So
right. Okay. Yeah. No, that's clear enough. Oh, also, there was no one ever answered my question of, are we looking to undo that change to the dean and department heads rules? Is that something that's going to happen?
Again, we'll put it on the thing to take forward to the EC.
Okay, thank you.
I'm writing down all this notes, and I know it's being recorded, but
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
I'd like to recognize, with the speaker's permission, Dr. Anand.
Yes.
I agree. Speaker Hammond, is that okay?
Yes, it is perfectly okay.
Yeah, Dr. John Buchanan is a faculty ombudsperson. He can also mediate disputes between the faculty and the administrator and vice versa. And if you want to make a change on the SAP, by all means, let the EC suggest a language. We'll post it for comments, and we'll take the comments and then forward it to the president. And president is the final authority on the SAP. If it is a rule, it goes through the University Rules Committee. And that's how it was. The last changes were done.
Thank you. Any other questions for committee of the whole? Or comments, I should say.
Yeah,
All right.
I have a question for NK now that he's on.
No, that's not what this is about. Remember, it's comments for speaker for committee of the whole. Yeah, I'm just trying to stick to what we're supposed to be doing as committee of the whole. Then I'm going to return the meeting back to Speaker Hammond.
Thank you very much, Speaker-elect Price. Sorry, 1 second. I think if there's nothing more, we just might need someone to move
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, thank you all for hanging out a little bit longer today. Hopefully we'll start to get back to more normalcy soon. So take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.